So far?
So far, we have Jason Thielen, Frank Gordon, Police Chief Brian William.
Yep.
And,
We do have Carla. Okay, so we have everybody here then. Okay, guys, we're going to get started with our meeting. I'd like to welcome everyone out to City Council tonight. We have a mix of in-person attendance and online attendance. So we'll start out with a roll call with those online, starting with Carla.
Carla Merrill, present.
Jason.
Jason Thielen, present.
Greg.
Greg Gordon, present.
And Lon.
Lon Lott, present.
Jessica Smuin, present.
And Troy Stout, present. I would also like to recognize both our fire and police chiefs, Chief Brian William of our police department and Reed Thompson from our fire department. And our special guest this evening, David Church, our soon-to-be former city attorney, and to our new city attorneys. Oh boy, you're gonna have to help me, Craig, Paul,
Craig Hall.
and Hiram. Thank you. Oh, okay, Steve. Why did I say Paul?
Steve Hall.
I'm making Steve Hall, not Paul. Sorry, I'm making stuff up here. We'll start with a word of prayer from Jessica.
Our Father in heaven, we come before thee this evening with gratitude for this time that we have to focus on the needs of the city. We're thankful, Father, for the beauty that surrounds us, for all that we have. We're grateful for this time that we have to make decisions, and we ask for thy guidance and direction. And we're grateful for all those that are in attendance and that are able to devote their time and focus into improving our community. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Jessica. I'd also like to recognize online, I believe we have our Planning Commission Chair, Jane Greiner, in attendance as well. I'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Consent calendar. Are there any descriptions we need for the consent calendar? Pretty much just have one item
Now
there.
we have that one.
Yeah, I
amendment.
added this. This came in. I was out of town for the last half of last week. I didn't get it on the agenda, but it's something that we would like to get going. So it's kind of a newer technology, at least to us. It's an acoustic assessment of our sewer system. So our sewer system's about a little over like probably 41 years old. So we're kind of in the mode of trying to maintain, and it's a very expensive system if we had to rebuild it. And so this is kind of a tool that can be used to prevent major issues down the road and kind of anticipate problems. I'm not smart enough to tell you how this works, but multiple cities in our county and Salt Lake County and going up north have used this to identify issues in their system. With our TVing sewer lines, it takes multiple years to get to our city because we just do it our contract with Timpanogos Special Service District. We don't have our own equipment to do that. They would be able to go through our entire system of roughly 1,500 manholes and do this in a couple of weeks, and then give us a report and tell us where problems are that we can pinpoint. Maybe we're focusing this year on the west side of town. There's a problem on the east side. This would help us to know where to focus our efforts. We don't believe we need to do the manhole inspections. We do that on an annual basis. It was part of our kind of an agreement with our insurance company. But it's about $51,200, which sounds like a lot of money, but this isn't something we would go do every year or even every 5 years. You know, maybe it's a once every 10-year deal for us. So it's something that we would like to do. We don't have a lot of expenses in our sewer system. We think this is money well spent to try to get ahead of any issues that we might have out there.
Shane, what is the original estimation for the lifespan of that sewer system when it was installed? Is it 50 years?
I think they kind of use that in for depreciation, a
Mhm.
50-year life.
Yeah.
But it for the most part will last longer.
Yeah.
We're fortunate that we don't have much groundwater in our city. You know, American Fork sends a lot of groundwater to the treatment plant that they pay for because the meter is at the bottom of their city. So anything that goes through the line gets metered and they get billed for. We don't have that issue here. So they spend a ton of money down there fixing infiltration problems. I mean, of roughly 1,500 manholes in the city, we have maybe 3 that even have any seepage at all.
Yeah.
So we're very fortunate that way.
Is there any indication that the earthquakes earlier this year would have caused any problems?
This would help determine
Yeah.
that, the way it works. So it
Okay.
sees issues like that.
Okay.
We'd like to try it, see what it shows us.
There's the 2 line items, this manhole.
Mhm.
You'd mentioned the 51,000 is the first. Do we need both of them then?
No, we don't believe we need the manhole
Okay.
inspections. We actually did an assessment on all of our manholes and actually drew little individual 1-page maps of all our manholes and elevations and everything of the entire city several years ago. And then we're pretty much up to date for anything that's been built new since then. So I don't feel like we need to do.
So the pictures are a baseline from where they're located and of the manholes.
So our manhole sheets do have pictures,
Mhm.
and it helps to know which direction's north and which way each, if it's a 3-way manhole or a 4-way, which way all the flows are, and then elevations and those things. So pipe sizes,
Okay.
if it's a drop manhole, we have all of that already. This acoustic study is really creating a baseline from here forward. So they can do a comparative analysis down the road. If we, first, if this shows any issues that we need to be watching out for.
Okay. Any more questions for Shane on that? Okay. Ready for a motion on the consent calendar?
I do, Mayor, I do have one item I did not get with get to make a correction on the my goodness, on the minutes of last meeting, page 2, line 28, our Eagle Scout project in Lambert Park. It talks about it being below the pavilion across from the rodeo grounds. It's not, he was talking about where rodeo crosses, not rodeo grounds. So
Right.
Rodeo trail.
Not the grounds. So,
South side of the road.
so we need to scratch that if we could, the grounds out of that and put trail on that. And then I'll make a motion. Has anyone else actually had anything they wanted to correct?
Can I add one item on page 9, line 36? Right before the motion, I want to just add that I pointed out that I wanted to make that motion without adding the touchless water stations, that someone else could make that motion after I had made mine, just to make that clear that was added.
Bonnie, did you get that? Bonnie with us? I think she's in her office.
Yeah. Right. Trying to find that.
Okay, any further discussion on the consent calendar?
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent calendar with those noted changes.
Okay, we have a motion by Lon Lot. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Jessica Smewen. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Carla, you're muted. I didn't hear you vote.
I said aye.
Okay, thank you. All right, motion passes unanimously. Okay, we have set aside some time for public comment. Austin, do we have anybody online that would like to make a comment? Do you receive any emails?
So we checked the emails before 5 p.m. and we did not have any comments. I'll just see if anything's come in since then. Not look like it. And let me check YouTube. And YouTube, I do not have any comments there either.
Okay. Then I will end the public comment time. I'd like to take an opportunity to recognize our retiring city attorney, David Church, who we invited to be with us tonight. He's been a little trunky for the last few months, but we've been really happy to have David stick with us through the time it took to interview and decide on our new city attorneys. And I, for one, would like to thank David for everything that he's done for the city. And it precedes my experience of the city by a number of years, by about 15 years. And I wanted to thank David for the contributions that he's made, not only to our meetings, but to the time when we're not in public meetings, where he's given great counsel and always kept us in line and helped us to make good decisions, hopefully. And I just want to point out that David is widely respected throughout the state by his peers and by cities throughout the state whose counsel he has given, or who have received his counsel. And, David is always one of those people that people look forward to listening to speak at the annual, League of Cities and Towns convention. And I know that he's been a great person to refer to when we need good advice. We thank you for your commitment to the city of Alpine, David, and want to thank you for your friendship and for being associated with us. We'd like to present something to you. Did you want to say something? Do you want to pontificate for us for a minute?
No, I'll just comment. I thank you very much. You shouldn't thank me. I should thank you. It's been a pleasure representing you and being your attorney. I think I've been your attorney since either 1996 or 1997. I can't remember which it is. You could tell from the minutes if you look back on it. I'm proud to say that I've represented Alpine City. You've been a wonderful client. You can be proud of what you've done for your city, and your predecessors should be proud. My experience with the staff, with the mayors, with the council members, with the people who've worked for Alpine, done nothing but convince me of your love and loyalty for your community. Whether you're a long timer or a new person that comes in, I've always been impressed with how you testify of Alpine's beauty and worth and work to defend and better it. And in my experience, I think you've done it. And so let me just say thank you very much for the opportunity to represent you. I haven't been trunky. I've just mentally quit. Let me also say that I think you've done a good job. I know Craig. I know Steve Doxey, who's here, your new attorneys. I don't know Hiram. I'm sure he's going to be a quality attorney. I've known Craig since high school. He's older than I am. Worked with Steve in the city business since probably the mid 80s. I can't remember exactly when he first got into the city business. And so I know they're both very experienced. I personally think that you've upgraded, at least in legal knowledge and in the seriousness of the endeavor that it is. And so, but thank you very much. I appreciate everything you've done. I'm sure that we'll run into each other at other places, other times. I'm just quitting. I'm not dying.
David, we have something for you. I want you to know I looked long and hard for a leg lamp, but I couldn't locate one soon enough. But here's a little something to help you in your retirement. Hopefully you enjoy. Let me come around. I hope this gives you a lot of enjoyment, and if it doesn't, you can always return it for credit.
Well, thank you. Well, I
Thank
never
you.
do.
Appreciate you.
Normally, all they give me is my name tag because they don't know what to do with them. But this is lots better. Thank you very much.
Thanks, David.
He needs his name tag.
Oh, he does need his name
You
tag.
should take that.
Better hand that over.
Yes, you do.
I don't know what to do with these.
There should be a ruler on the back. Thank you, David, and thank you for being such a fixture in our community for so long and for all the great things that you've done for us. Thank you. And now I'd like to take time to introduce our new city attorney, Craig Hall. We spent some time in the interview process and feel like we did make the best selection possible. And we welcome Craig to the city of Alpine and really happy to have you and your team to work for us in the future, work with us in the future. Please.
We're excited to be here. I have to tell you, you may not know this, but you just retired a Murray High School graduate and hired another Murray High School graduate. We grew up in the same, he lived on the east side and I always lived on the west side, but spent a lot of time with his older brother Blaine and playing various sports and other endeavors at the high school. We're excited to be here. We thank you for your confidence. We hope we merit that confidence. And tonight, and we won't do this on a regular basis, I brought our team here intentionally because as we interviewed with the folks, with Shane and the mayor and Greg, it's a team approach. We have depth in our office, and that's what is the strength of our firm. Sure, I bring a lot of experience and that sort of thing and knowledge, but we also bring with us great abilities. Steve Doxey, been around in the city business for about 22 years. He represents West Bountiful presently. City attorney's done that for many years. Hiram is my right-hand man. He's graduated in 2017 as clerk of the Supreme Court of the state of Utah. He's a marvelous writer, a great thinker. Austin gave us an assignment yesterday and we jumped on it about non-conforming uses and some changes. The mayor gave us by voicemail a couple of assignments yesterday to look at. We've already jumped on those to get some ideas. We took a field trip tonight with Austin and Shane to look at the area that has shooting issues and possible danger issues. Yesterday I met with Austin and Bonnie, so I got to know the city recorder and how she does business and what she expects from us, because we work for you. She doesn't work for us as we draft ordinances and agreements and resolutions and that sort of thing, because we need to be a team. And all I can say is we thank you for your confidence. I've known Jessica for maybe a year. I don't remember. It wasn't the greatest experience for either one of us. We did not come out on the success side, but it was interesting to go through the process. And I thought it was really funny. When I saw your name on the city council, I'm thinking, now she knows what the other side's like, because she did not have a great experience in another city and a request on a rezoning or a conditional use permit. I don't remember specifically. And so happy to be here, and I'll make one more representation. I've given Shane and the mayor, and I hope they spread our contact information available. We're available, not 24/7, we're available most of the day. Our business hours are not 9 to 5. I have many clients who will, for example, the mayor of Leeds. I don't know if you've met Wayne Peterson, but great guy. Wayne will call me at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, because that's when he's available and that's when we're available. And flip side is too. Shut it off at 9-ish or 9:30, will you? So that we can have some time, but we're available. We want questions. We want reach out so that we can provide proactive legal work so we can keep you out of trouble rather than get you out. It's much cheaper. It's much cheaper. So thank you for allowing us to be here.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you being here, all of you. Thanks. And then with that, we'll thank everybody for coming. And Dave, I'll just have a quick word with you on the way out. Thanks for going, Lee. I keep forgetting about the mask. Okay. Lost Shane. Austin, were you going to bring us up to speed on the park signage, or is that going to be Shane?
I can bring you up to speed on that.
Okay.
So
Hey,
Park signage.
Mayor,
So
by
we-
the way,
Yes, Greg?
did you want me to present now on that, on the football capacity topic?
Yes, I was going to ask you to, as soon as we get the update on the signage, item C
Okay,
on
great,
the
thanks.
reports, if that's okay.
Thanks. Yeah, absolutely, thanks.
Thanks, Greg.
Okay, let me go ahead and pull this up on the screen here. So park signage, we actually have, so for those that aren't here tonight, we do have some examples set up out here in the hallway, just outside of the conference room, to kind of give you an idea of scale of what these signs would look like. So in your packet, you'll see this image, which is scaled at approximately 12 feet high. So this would be bigger than what we had, the example that we have out in the hallway. So I guess one of the inputs that we need that we want to get from city council is a scale of this. How big do we want that? So out in the hallway, we have a 3x4 example. On here, you're probably looking at a 6x8 would be the size of these maps on this digital.
Each map?
Each map
6
would
by
be
8.
6x8. So that's what they've did in this mock-up here. But out in the hallway, we have a 3x4. That over there on the wall too, you can kind of see that's a 3x4 just behind Jessica. For those online, I apologize that you can't see that. So anyway, that's one thing we want is the scale. The other is these maps, you might want to take a little time to look closer at them when you have a chance. There's a lot of details on them that the landscape architect is looking for the city council's input and opinion on. So for example, the labels, the font, coloring, the trails, we've met with the landscape architect already, and we've wanted them to make the trails really bright and kind of pop out from the rest of the map. And so that's something that's kind of an example of something that they're looking for. And then there's a lot of little details on the maps that, you know, you get a lot of the council members probably ride the trails and you know where the trail alignment's going. So just take a closer look at that kind of thing too.
Okay.
And so we're working with them on this right now. They are putting this together, and as they get the feedback, they will redraft it and come back with a more finalized. So this is kind of a rough draft of what they're looking to do, what's being proposed. And once they get your feedback and input, they'll come back with something more finalized.
Okay.
So I have an opinion, Mayor. It's Carla. So the map on the left-hand side that has the entire Alpine City Trails map, while it's great, I've noticed that whenever I go to either a new ski resort or a new bike trail system, to have a map that's all encompassing like that is kind of overwhelming. I feel like I have a tendency to look at those things at home and online where I can kind of dissect it and kind of get a better idea of where I'm at and kind of zoom into different areas. I don't know if that would be a great if it would be a benefit to our community. I don't know, maybe people are different and they would appreciate a big map like that. But for me, if I go to a new area, that would be completely overwhelming. While the one for Lambert Park that's specific to the area that I'm in could be very handy. But I just feel like if it's, it could just be too much. If they can color coordinate the hiking and the biking routes, similar to what I feel like is the standardized way on Trail Forks or Mountain Bike Project or any of the other common apps and websites, by using green for beginner, blue for intermediate, and black for black diamonds or difficult, and they can go to any of those apps. They've already had these mapped out to what difficulty levels they are. That might be helpful. So people that are new to the area and aren't as familiar with the trails, they'll know what kind of difficulty they're getting into.
Thanks, Carla. Jessica, what are your
Carla,
thoughts?
just one comment. So I think one of the things that the trail committee has said, the reason why they want to do the larger map on the left-hand side is they would like to, they want to show, and they would highlight this connection between one park to the other. So you could see the connectivity between Lambert Park and Three Falls, and then Three Falls to, the corner
Right.
area.
No, and I get it, but I feel like if I'm where that would be, either people are going to know the area or they're not, right? And or maybe they haven't been to it as much. But I honestly feel like when I was exploring Corner Canyon trails, I was on Trail Forks and Mountain Bike Project and kind of looking at those trails. Whenever I heard a new trail name, I would look them up and see how they connected, how I can get there, which trailheads would be the most convenient for me, and how all these trails connected. But if someone doesn't know where they're going and they just go to a map like that, shows the entire city, I feel like it's just too much. I feel kind of that way when people go to ski resorts. I'm a bit snowbird quite a bit, and I volunteer quite up there quite a bit. And a lot of people will just stand in front of that map and they're completely overwhelmed. And, I think the important thing is on any map that we do put on, definitely put in a great big marker, you are here.
Yeah.
So they have an idea of where they are relative to that map. And then, I don't know, I don't want to be the only one talking here, but I do feel like I do have experience. And just because I am so new to writing, that at least that's the way I tackle it. If I go to a brand new area that I've never been to and then look at a huge map and I'm not even sure of the area that I'm in, I don't know how helpful that is.
Lon, did you have something?
Yeah, I think if we had an overall map that's maybe smaller, and then the actual Lambert Park area, if you're in the Lambert Park area map, that is a larger one, that maybe they'll just use the smaller map as a reference and not spend any time on that one, but spend time. My opinion on some of these things, and I'd like as they're drawn this in each of the locations, to make sure that park map, that particular area map, is oriented exactly how the park sits on the sign in the location where the sign is sitting. I've had majority of people complain who've new to the area say it's confusing. It's upside down.
Yeah.
It's,
We talked about that.
even though they have a "you are here," they're still upside down where they're standing.
You are here, stand on your head and you'll
Uh-huh.
get,
So that's one of my big things, is make sure it's oriented, and and it'll be different in the three different places in Lambert Park, depending on where you're sitting. That same map will be sitting upside down compared to that one that we're seeing right now. So those are some things, but that's some of my.
okay. So if I, when I listen to you, Lon, you like having an overall map because it does help you understand the interconnectivity between the trails. And if you, as long as it tells you where you are. And Carla, I get what you mean by dedicating that much space to an overall map. What would you guys think if we took that left-hand section in this picture, for example, and dedicated half of that portion to the overall map, and then the lower portion would be dedicated to park rules and etiquette, trail etiquette. so that you're seeing that reminder that there are rules and etiquette guidelines along with finding the trail.
So one thing that's a challenge with maps is scale. So if you look at the shape of that overall map, if you cut that in to fit in half of that area, it's going to be really small because it's going to shrink side to side. You know what I'm saying?
It's 6 by 8 right now. Is that what you're saying?
So
You said, Austin?
In this diagram, it is, yeah. In this.
Okay.
each of the maps. So we have a sign ordinance, and this is one of those times when it comes back to city's supposed to follow the sign ordinance also.
Yeah.
That kind of limits us, and we figured we can have these maps. So each one of these with our sign ordinance could be 3 feet wide and 4 feet tall. We figured a couple feet off the ground, and then the little roof on the kiosk, and then the poles and everything. So essentially, we can be
6 feet tall and 8 feet wide.
Yeah.
So I guess I didn't think of the sign ordinance because I don't consider this to be a sign that advertises anything. But
We
is that,
questioned it also and looked it up, and
There's a category for public signs.
Uh-huh.
we can change it
I mean,
with the advice of our city attorney.
Process.
yeah.
Yeah. So
What if we did a 2/3 scale and we left 1/3 open? Because that's a lot of real estate. And it'd be nice to have a place even where we could slide in, trail bait, and have a place to put, a couple of key etiquette points, and then maybe where we could have active announcements.
So when we started this process, one of the ideas I had was to have one sign on one side of the kiosk and one on the back side. And you run the potential of someone not knowing there's something on the other side. But maybe that's something we could do, is have a place on the other side for rules, and maybe half for rules or something like that, and the other half for announcements or things that need to be posted.
Yeah, because you're right. That's a lot of real estate. Jason, did you have any comments? Wait a second. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jason.
I somewhat disagree a little bit with Carla. Carla researches things out really well. I know her, but there's a lot of people who don't go to that effort, and I can see them actually coming to this sign system and conceivably spending more time on the Alpine City trail maps, learning about something that they didn't know about previously. So I actually think shrinking that one down, the scale is so much larger there that you're going to have a harder time seeing some of those smaller trails that maybe they might want to look up and research. I like the idea of a big Alpine City Trails map on there as opposed to shrinking it down. That's all.
Thank you.
So this is Carla again. I agree with Jason. I think shrinking it down will make it really more difficult to read. You don't see the details. But what if instead of doing the entire Alpine City map, do maybe the sections that would be adjoining it, and then refer them where they can go onto the website to see the entire map? Because most people are going to be writing with their smartphones, and they can go and do that, zoom in on areas that they want and whatnot. But maybe on the other map, include the adjacent areas that people might be trying to connect to and how to connect to those. But
So I
not
guess
necessarily the entire city.
I'm thinking of the guy or the couple who shows up at Lambert Park because they've heard about Lambert Park and they want to try a few trails and they're enjoying themselves. And they don't even know about the adjoining trails or the nearby trails up in this area now, up north, where we have new trails. To me, if I'm in that situation, I don't know if I'd be willing to go back and research it online, and I guess, Carla, to your point, if you've got Trail Forks or Strava or one of the other apps, you could probably find them. But it is nice to have a quick visual of where you are versus where nearby trails might be located that you didn't know about.
Well, and I think if we go back and we say, well, what's the intention? The intention is you know where you're at. And then also it looks like the intention is promoting Alpine Trail System
Mhm.
and that it's an entire trail experience in our entire community.
Yeah.
So if that's the goal, then this accomplishes it. If the goal is just what's your ride today and what might it connect to nearby, then this doesn't fit that model. So I think if we can clearly state what's our goal, then it'll be easy to decide which way to approach it.
Yeah, really good point.
Yeah, and our thought was to hopefully show trail connectivity with
Mhm.
the smaller scale, but the entire city on the left. And then if you were in that specific park, you have the more detailed map
Yeah.
there.
That's the camp I would fall into. I like being able to see both at a glance. Where am I compared to everything else in the city and what's near me?
But we have, again, this is blown up about as large as you can at this size,
Yeah.
but that would give us this area right here that could be used for rules because there's really no trails.
Yeah.
It's just kind of useless space, but we can actually, our legend is there.
And you can't bike there
So-
anyway legally.
Yeah.
On the
Right.
on the newer one, which is not in the packet, but we have an example on the wall. That's where the legend has been placed. Yeah.
Okay.
So take a look at that. It's got a lot of good information.
Good deal.
Austin, did you tell them that for size and scale, we hung
Yeah.
these two maps out here?
Yeah, I told them that you can get an idea of what it would be on a smaller scale by looking out here in the hallway, and
Yeah.
then this is kind of a lot larger scale that you're seeing depicted. These images.
And I think we need to come up with a way that all the information is on one side, because on the back, it just, of the ones we already have, it just is, no one's going to go back there unless we want to do a triangle where people then go around it and know that there's information all the way around. But I'm wondering if we could have, again, a sleeve or something where all it is trail work day. I mean, we have like 3 things, right, that we want to promote out there. So consider how can we incorporate announcements.
Well, I bike a lot from here up to the top of Suncrest and take those trails. And my turnaround point is where there's a big sign like this. And I can tell you it has 2 sides, but I've only ever seen one side. I typically go up, touch the sign, and then start heading down the other trails. And other people approach from the other side and may be in the same boat, but they only see the one side.
So one thing I want to point out is at the bottom of the maps, there's some brown area there. So that's actually part of the map itself. And so there is some space there that you could put rules or whatever you want or announcements. I don't know. There's some space there though.
Greg, you're the only one I think who hasn't made a comment. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah. So Austin, how are you looking for feedback on this? Are we trying to cover it all here, or do you want more? I could point out maybe, I don't know, 5 or 10 kind of smaller things, or maybe they're bigger. Do you want to consolidate, or are we going to look at this in multiple weeks? Or
I think it would be good if we could if everybody could either email your thoughts and ideas, or come and take a look at the live example, and we could sit down and kind of talk about it that way. And I can take notes on what your feedback is.
Okay.
Whatever works for you
Yeah.
but I think that would be better. So you can
Yeah.
really get detailed, oriented on the map itself.
I like that. For the sake of time, let's kind of move in that direction so that we can move on to other topics on the agenda. But please encourage everybody to get that feedback sometime in the next week so we can wrap this up and get these things in production. I think, I like the rendition that you have there up on the screen. I think it looks really nice. I like the scale. And I think it'll be a welcome sight. If we can get that, because we have the 3 main entrances to Lambert. We've got 3 falls. We've got actually 2 or 3 entrances to Lambert Falls now. I'm sorry, Lambert Falls, 3 falls. And so I think the more of these we can get up, the better.
I just have one
Hey.
more question about the trails or the sign initiative. Is this going to offer solutions for our signage? Is this going to work towards that, or is this just for the the directional signage and trails.
That was my question as well. Could we try to, consolidate some of the signage onto here and eliminate some others and somehow, whether it's that space at the bottom or in a corner or something?
Yeah, however you'd like us to approach it, we can do that.
I think we also need to keep in mind that if we make it too busy, it will start to lose its impact. It's like a long email. You kind of pick the highlights and then move on.
Spreadsheet on a PowerPoint.
Okay, got what you need, Austin?
Yeah.
Okay.
Very much, yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Greg has put together some information regarding the organized sports that we have going on over at the middle school. And so he's asked if he could have some time, and I think it's great information for him to share with the council. So Greg, take it away.
Yep. Thanks, Mayor. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm going to share a slide here. Hang on. Oh.
Appreciate you getting this together, Greg. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Hold on. Yeah, here we are. Okay. So, basically, I think, probably a lot of us, and I've gone over to Timberline on Saturday afternoon for years, and I keep thinking, gosh, youth football is sure popular. And I kind of scratching my head going, man, there's sure a lot of parking. And so I finally went and looked at the data and was a little bit astonished at what I saw. And this doesn't really affect, I think, how we've been thinking about this or approaching it, or, our plan on some of the parking challenges over there. But I think it does give some understanding as well as some rationale moving forward. So, a few data points here that I just found really interesting. The youth football conference here that goes all the way from South Jordan through Utah County to Payson. There's 27 fields where they play games. And of them, besides Timberline, how many had 4 games played at once, or even 3 games, right? And this is kind of, the essence of the problem right there. All other fields max out at 2 at a time, probably because of parking, not because they don't have fields or huge amount of grass. Also, of those 27 locations, how many of them played games on at least 8 Saturdays, pre, semifinals and finals like we do here at Timberline, right? And there's not one, right? So I think there's maybe a couple others with 7, but on average, these fields are hosting 3.9 days out of the entire season. Going on, of all of the cities, right, from all of Utah County and Harriman and Bingham, how many of those, what city hosted the most, and it's Little Alpine, right? We have 23% more than the second most city, which I think was Lehigh or Spanish Fork, and 147% more than the median. But that's really not the biggest issue. Which location had the most games? And that's really the problem, right? So Lehigh hosts a bunch, but they're probably in 3 different spots. But in Alpine, it's just at Timberline. So when you look at a single location, we're hosting 132% more, not as much, but more games than, the second most location, or 365% more than the median locale. And you look at why, 37% of these games don't include any Lone Peak team. And Lone Peak has a lot of football teams. But you throw in Sky Ridge as well, right? About a quarter don't include either of those teams. And so you end up having some of these really strange matchups, like Payson at Provo played in Alpine, Harriman versus Westlake in Alpine, Lehigh at Tentview, Pleasant Grove at American Fork, where they're just causing these, kids and families to add an extra hour of driving. I don't know why. It must be just easy to schedule here or something. But looking further, it's also disproportionate. We do have a lot of teams, but we're hosting, more than 50% more than our share. And of course, Alpine, Lone Peak is not Alpine. We're a, minor portion of the Lone Peak football area. And so, when it comes down to is Timberline has 227 stalls, 25 there convenient, by the tennis courts, which really breaks out to having 2 simultaneous games like any other location, which makes sense. So last Saturday, I counted 160. I think there's times it probably goes above 200. But importantly, at Burgess Park on Saturday, there were no events. If we add in 4 or 5 baseball games and a rugby game, and there could be something at the church as well, right? Then it's going to be a real problem. And that's the challenge. And if there was a gap between the games, the problem is, they'll hold 3 or in past years 4, when it was way worse then, games at once, but they're almost back to back, right? Maybe a 10-minute gap. So everyone's there already. So, you're hosting basically everyone for 16 teams there, worst case. And that's how you get to these just huge numbers. And they could go back to 4 fields. It seems to me, because in the last 2 years, they've added 25 more teams in this league. So, right. So, this is an easy place, I think, to schedule. Yeah.
So I know you've got these percentages with populations, but one thing that you need to consider as far as the Lone Peak Youth Football League, it has one of the highest registration in the league. You look at other cities that are in the youth conference, which is, like you said, it goes all the way down to Payson to South Jordan. But South Jordan, you're not getting all of South Jordan. Most of South Jordan plays in the Ute Conference. Most of Provo and Orem play in their own conference. I forget what it's called at this point. So you have people that are leaving their conferences and joining ours because we have a higher rate for and we have people leaving, you've got half of Lehigh playing in the Ute Conference because you can run with the ball at a much lower weight. I feel like our conference is a little bit safer for the younger kids and even the older kids because it protects them by having these weight limits. So yes, we do attract more people to come, but you don't have any teams out of the Lone Peak Youth Football League that have splintered off and gone to other conferences. They have stayed within this conference. So I feel like your percentages are skewed because you have people from Pleasant Grove that have gone to the Ute Conference. You have people from American Fork that have gone to the Ute Conference, but we have none of the teams from Alpine that I know of in the last 8 years that have splintered off and gone to other conferences looking to be able to run the ball at a much higher weight. Or, so you got to consider that. Another reason that Timberline does, and I'm sure, they'll have to deal with it, is to keep the cost lower for the registration, because each field that we play and each field that we donate or put in the coffer, so we have to rent those fields, right? The conference does, and so they just need to up their registration, which is, I feel like in the last 3 or 4 years they've been putting more and more money into equipment to make it safer for the kids. But yes, if you decide to cut down the number of fields at Timberline, registration fees will go up, and maybe that's something they'll need to deal with, and they'll need to look for other fields. But I don't feel like, for the number of kids that we have playing in the league, those are the number of fields that are required. So in order for us to be able to contribute to the league, they'll need to find fields somewhere. But yes, I'm sure they can rent fields somewhere else.
Yeah, I think that's the overwhelming fact, is that we have a parking problem that has created issues for the neighborhoods over there beyond what would be expected of neighbors, of people who've purchased homes near a park. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that I had a conversation with one of the parents coming out to a car and just asked the question as politely as I could if they'd received any type of request from the coaches that they used the school parking lot. And this parent was belligerent about their right to park on the street and said it's too bad for those people who bought in that location. They should expect it. And so there's, I think, Carla, to your point, I think we want to make sure that we're providing opportunities for our kids here. But I also look at the fact that if the burden that we're bearing is that much greater than most other communities, and I know that the numbers could be a little skewed, but I think there's pretty valid points to the fact that we have more people here parking at one time than we should.
This sounds like a mass gathering to me.
Yeah, well, and it started, and I'd like to, maybe Chief William could comment on this, that the incident that occurred between parents and coaches a couple of weeks ago on that same day, where the police we had to call for backup basically to settle a very large disagreement, we'll call it. Chief, do you have any details to share on that, just to give some light to how intense this problem can become?
On that particular incident, I'll just speak in general, because that one was quite intense, but this occurs frequently when you get competitive parents together and there becomes an argument. This one was over social distancing and people moving into somebody else's space. That's how this thing initially started. But it ended up being, we had 10 adults that were squabbling back and forth with each other, two that assaulted each other. And it's just something that continually happens. I can appreciate what Carla is saying, but like I mentioned in our last council meeting, the police department is spending an inordinate amount of time, especially on Saturdays, trying to deal with the parking problem and over there at Timberline. The stalls get filled up, and Ted Stillman was out there this last Saturday, and the sergeant was out there with him. They discussed some resolutions or some options, and I'm not sure, Councilman Gordon, if those made it back to you or not, but there are certainly options that we could, or things that we can look at from a staff standpoint to kind of help alleviate that. But honestly and truthfully, in my opinion, the school is the one that needs to take a closer look at how many games they're going to be scheduling. It's just, we spend a lot of time out there. It's every Saturday right now, and as weather turns colder in the season, as we certainly need to sit down with the staff at Timberline and discuss upcoming ball games, whether they be lacrosse or football or things that they play on their field. We need to limit, in my opinion, the amount of games that happen over there, so we can have an orderly fashion of parking and have enough stalls and adequate parking spaces, but B, I think we have a duty to the residents over there trying to help solve it. But that's just my thoughts.
Thank you, Chief. Greg, would you like to continue with your?
Yeah, no, I'd agree, and great points, Carl. I did take that into account, somewhat, with the current teams, right? We would host 10% of games, and it's about 15%. But it's a good point, right? And I'm sure that's why. But they do have 26 other locations. There may be options. It may be difficult, but there is, anyway, there's a real challenge, and we could spend several minutes on, what happens any given day. But I think this is what, we can work towards is work with Timberline to limit the fields like they do elsewhere. And I suspect they just don't have the parking there elsewhere. And then set some, parking restrictions that we enforce. And I've talked to the principal, at length about this, and he says, he can't be over there policing everyone. He says, you set the restrictions and enforce it, and that's fine. So, I think we can, come up with something reasonable. That's all I had, Mayor. Just a kind of a little update on that.
Thank you for taking the time to put that together, Greg, and we appreciate the information. It's very, very relevant. Thanks.
Just to follow up on that, I just spent just a few minutes with Rob Smith, who's the assistant administrator for the school district, and one of the board members and another representative from the district on Monday. They would like to have a kind of a breakfast meeting with the council and just kind of tell the council what's going on in the district, and then take any concerns or questions that the council has for them. It's tough for them to make it here on our city council night because their board meeting conflicts. So November 12th at 7:30 a.m. is the proposed time. You should have all received an email from Bonnie today on that. So they'd love to meet with everyone, and I brought this issue up to them, and we had a good discussion for a few minutes about it. Apparently, the new schools that they're building, they put more parking in kind of the back of the schools than what Timberline has, like quite a bit more. That was something that Rob noticed right off the bat. So anyway, it'd be a good opportunity to bring the concerns up to them that you have.
I'm just putting, does anybody have an issue with that date? The 12th of November at 7:30 a.m.
I'll be out of town that day.
And is that going to be public notice then?
Yes, we would notice it publicly so that they do this in multiple other cities, so that the entire council could come. And they said occasionally they'll get one or two residents that will show up, and that's fine. However many come, they're welcome to. That's why we notice it.
So I responded to Bonnie. I will also be out of town.
And Jason Thielen will be out of town as well.
Jason, do you feel like was it Bonnie who just spoke?
Carla's-
Carla?
I'm out of town, Jason.
Okay. Does anybody feel like we need to reschedule so you could be here, or are you okay with us moving forward without you?
Well, no, that was me, Troy. Carla
What?
Merrill will also be out of town. It was on the email string if you checked your email.
No, I haven't yet.
So yeah, you've got 2 out of 5 that will be out of town for that time and date.
Thanks for pointing that out there, Carla. Appreciate it.
I'd like to be there if I could, but if that's when you want to have it, then obviously I won't be able to make it.
Okay.
Hey, Shane, can I would it be possible to initiate a Zoom option? If Jason and Carla wanted to attend that way?
Yes, we could do it. It would be, I would envision the same format we have here, and we could have a Zoom option. Yes.
Okay.
So if that works, we can do that. If you want to be there and are not able to that day by some means, we can try to reschedule that. We might have to send breakfast with you because we can't Zoom that.
We'll issue coupons.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's move forward with the 12th.
Okay.
With the Zoom option. All right.
I think it'd be great to have the Chiefs there as well.
Yeah.
I will plan on attending. I will be in Fort Worth that day, but if you have a Zoom option available, I'll be there.
Okay.
And I won't be able to attend via Zoom. I'll be in a location that does not have that. So I'll read the cliff notes, I guess.
Same here.
Okay. Let's move forward with the first item, action item A.
Okay, so Troy, you're going to proceed with 3 council members and the 2 not being able to Zoom in. Is that correct?
I'm okay postponing the meeting if you'd like to. If you feel strong that you'd like to be here, I'm absolutely happy to move it to a different date.
If it's at all possible, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. Does the following week work? Are we into Thanksgiving at that point? I think that's still the week before Thanksgiving.
I am out of town the 11th and 12th. But anything other than that, I'm good.
Jason, when are you back?
And this is hard, I apologize, but I'm out the full week of that week of the 12th, and then I'm back for 3 days, and I take off on the 19th again for another week. So I'm back the 16th, 17th, and 18th of November, or next week.
Okay, let's do this. Let's go ahead and go back to the email chain to see who, if we can arrive at a date where everybody can
Okay.
be here without trying to hash it out right here.
We'll check with the school district, get a few options for dates, and then we'll email those out to council and have you respond back to us.
Okay, now we'll move on. Austin.
Okay. All right. So our trail master plan is in need of an update. It's been a little while since that's been updated, and many of the trails that we used to show on there as proposed trails are actually real trails now. They've been built out. Notably would be kind of some of the trails in the that connect the Rigid Alpine to the Heritage Hills area, which is kind of in the middle of the screen where I'm moving my mouse right now. And so, you know, a lot of trails have been built. Also, we've saw this as an opportunity to update some other elements on the trail master plan. So one of those being trailheads. So we used to have on what's on the current map, I should say, is we have labels for trail access locations where you can access trails. What that is basically just where a trail crosses a road or something like that. There's actually a lot of places in town where it could be considered a trail access, but it wasn't shown on the map. And so we just thought it's probably not the most useful thing to be showing on the map, and it'd just be better if we just showed trailheads. And so trailheads have been reclassified, and essentially what that means is that there's parking, there's a restroom, and then also access to the trail at that location. And so that's what we're showing on the trail master plan here. Other than that, also, we have taken this as an opportunity to add in a proposed trail that the city council has been discussing, and it's on our agenda as our last item on the agenda that we'll discuss tonight. But I just wanted to point that out, that here on the map, if you look here on the east side of Lambert Park, there is a trail that goes, it follows the city boundary as closely as possible. So that's been included as part of the trail master plan. And we did hold a public hearing on this. And so, you know, there was an opportunity for people to come out and comment on these changes. We didn't have a lot of feedback. We do have a representative of the trail committee here tonight. I don't know if you have any comments, Breezy.
No, I don't have any comments, but if you have questions.
Now, I'd like to comment on we do have this as the last agenda item tonight, the walking trail. And I completely support putting it where you just pointed it out, right along here. But at least a year ago, maybe 18 months ago, Will came in and proposed another portion of walking only down in this area, this western part of the park. So I'm hoping that we don't lose sight of that for people who don't want to gain that much elevation, because this is a fairly steep hike, which is great, but there are people who won't want to do that. We need to maintain some lower
We have
section.
two areas, actually 3 areas for walking only.
Good.
We'll take out a lot of the elevation, and we have one that moves up to 3. But if we can somehow connect them.
Hey, Breezy, can you come and speak in the microphone? Because
Those that are online, yeah.
Sorry.
Breezy at the Trail Committee. Yeah, but we've already had approval of, I think, 3 walking only trails. 2 of them will be more flatter.
Mm-hmm.
And then up in spring, we'll get some elevation. So I don't think that'll be an issue. It would just be nice if there's somehow, and it would be a little tough to go from the spring one and somehow connect it to that easterly walking only trail.
Yeah.
So I know this map has a few proposed trails shown. If it's already been approved and you know where it's going to be, should we also include that as proposed walking trails? I mean, the screen one's here.
They should be on there. I think.
Yeah, they should be.
Should
I
be.
don't know why they're not on there, but
Yeah.
Because with our maps, we want to really get as close as we can because, we're going to get into the when do we update map. So if we already know and it's already approved,
yeah,
we
'cause
need
I
to
see the
include
one up
that.
by the Bowery that is not up there that we've actually started.
Hmm.
I'm hoping now that the leaves are gone, we can actually cut through some of the trees. So yeah. It probably didn't get put in because I didn't catch it, and I'm actually the one that was kind of spearheading that run hike only trail.
So we should have
Breezy.
maps from
Oh.
when those trails were approved. It'd be fairly simple to go back,
Yeah.
pull those maps, put the trails on this map, and bring it back to the next meeting.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, it's easy enough.
We could do that.
Yeah, I can sit down with a little marker and try to mark it out as I can.
Breezy,
We would
could you?
show those at this point as dashed lines to future trails.
Hey, Breezy, can you also put in the green flow trail that's intended for Lambert Park
I
as a dash
thought
line?
that was on there. I know we talked about it at the planning committee.
I thought it was.
I thought it was on there when we were here at planning commission.
I couldn't tell which one. Is it the one that's?
It is, where the spring up section,
Mm-hmm.
the south of that between, I don't remember the name of the roads, between spring up and the houses in that Box Elder community.
The up section near the bench.
Right there where that cursor is, yeah. And you can see where you've got the little, on the south end of the creek, that little spring. And I know we've got it spans from east all the way to the west about the road.
So it's not shown on here,
It's
Breezy.
not
Yeah,
shown.
I'm
no.
not seeing it. If you can add that also, that would be great. And by the way, Breezy, I have a perfect name for that green flow trail.
Yeah, what is that?
Easy Breezy.
Oh,
That's my vote, Breezy.
college, Carly. So.
I'd actually like to hear more about that, but we'll move on.
We'll have a lunch break.
All right. Is there anything else that we need to have added to the map that you guys feel would be helpful?
I guess the
Go ahead.
question I have is these walking trails. That's the first I heard of this. The East Trail being a walking only trail. Do they need to be designated differently on this map? And am I missing that they already are and I can't see it?
Maybe could you grab do you have a laser pointer there, Breezy? Here.
Is there a-
You're referring to the legend that it doesn't show that there's a walking trail only.
Right. To some degree, as we approve this trail map, I would assume that we're going to have discussions as a council on if we want certain trails to be walking only or not. But to do that, we kind of have to know where they are. Or am I incorrect on that?
Well, so Breezy, and you weren't suggesting that this will be a trail that's in addition to Spring Up, right?
No. Are you talking about the walking only trail?
Yes.
No, that was approved. I'm trying to remember if it was before Jason was on the council or not. I can't remember. But we had a walking only trail that kind of cut through.
Yeah, through that west end.
through middle and up kind of by Poppy. And it went on, trail is that there? I think it was between Poppy and the houses. And then from where Rodeo down crosses the road, there was a spur off of that, and it went up along the Bowery. And then there's some trees that are, you've got that little creek that goes along the Bowery. And we went just along the creek this way.
Okay.
And there's a small set, and this map isn't quite accurate. There is a section where there's a pretty good gap to where we can get up to the top of Spring.
On the roadside, the dirt road side,
On the dirt
city
road.
access?
Yes. I believe
Okay.
so. And then your green is from, to be accessed from the top of Spring, and it would go down along to Box Elder Drive. And it would just be, I think it would flow really well where they would use Spring as an uphill and that little flow trail, downhill flow trail only.
Okay. And what about, I guess my question would be about the downhill versus uphill onlys. Are we going to mark those on our trails maps?
I would think so. Right now, we don't, the only downhill only we have is Rodeo down,
Yeah,
but it doesn't show on any of the maps.
right.
I
That's
don't
where I think we have a safety issue because there are a lot of blind corners and high speed people coming down.
So on these other maps that we talked about previously, there are some trails that have up and down arrows on them, and they could be incomplete at this point, but that was something that was going to be shown on
Okay.
there.
Yeah, and that's a good point to make because up over by Three Falls area, we've got a proposed flow trails. We'll have one uphill, and then it would be a 2-directional green trail, and then we'll have a blue and a black downhill only for bikers only. So I think that'll be smart to have something on the map just showing people it is bike only, downhill only.
Yeah.
You want somebody hiking up it and having somebody flying down.
So do you feel like we need a motion tonight, or would you like to maybe work on it a little bit more and bring it back? Yeah, I think that's probably best. You've got enough guidance to rework it?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for the work you're doing.
Can I
We appreciate it.
can I add just a couple things that I notice here that it may be good to and you know, not particularly to the trails, but for consistency, City Hall Park isn't shaded green like Legacy or some of the others. You know, for consistency, the stake centers are called out here. The Long Drive Church is a stake center as well. Maybe a couple things to note there. The other thing is that, you know, I think, Mayor, you've referred to the Central Corridor Park. You know, that and a couple of these new areas, it may be good to affix a name to them, you know, once chosen.
It's this right here, right? The Central Corridor?
No.
Isn't that it?
Right here.
Oh, yeah, okay. Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Isn't this one called Park at South Point? Or no? Yeah, isn't that Park at South Point?
It's actually called Bexhill
It is?
Park.
Park?
I don't think very many people call it that, but
Okay.
a long time ago,
Okay.
that was changed.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Breezy. I think so.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
If I watch the Dodger game,
It can't be more exciting than this.
I put pause. I don't want to know the game.
Thanks, Breezy. Okay. Okay. Apologize. Hang on a second. I've lost my spot here. All right. I think it was Jessica that brought this up originally with the Trail Committee ordinance. Shane, do you want to introduce this? Or
Actually, let's have Austin.
you wanna do-
He ran it through the planning commission, and I think it'd be.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks,
So,
Austin.
yeah, this is our trail committee ordinance that you're seeing on the screen right now. It's something that the planning commission has spent some time working on together with the trail committee for their input and feedback. So they've crafted this. What this does is it makes the trail committee an official committee, and they're an official body of the city. And so this sets forth opportunity for us to set forth requirements like when they meet, how they're selected, and what their purpose is, etc. So so section A here: creation, composition, appointment of and compensation of the trail committee is established. There are 5 members from the community, and then they're supported by 2 members of staff, one from the planning department, one from the public works department. It outlines their terms, so terms of 3 years, and there are staggered terms. So three of them would have terms of 3 years, and the other 2 with terms of 2 years. Also, as far as how would a trail committee member be removed? It'd be from a majority vote of the committee. If you had 3 votes or more, you could remove a member, usually, from lack of participation or that type of thing. As far as the election of officers, they would have an annual election of a chairman, vice chairman, and secretary among its members. The city council would be the governing body that would still be in charge. So the city council could establish a set of bylaws and rules and regulations that they would have to operate by. And then finally, the purpose of the trail committee is primarily an advisory committee, city council, and it would serve to, for basically to outline our trails, organize trail work, and other needs that the city council might see. So that's kind of in a nutshell what this goes over. It's had quite a few eyes on it, and it's been, modified to I think everybody kind of agrees this is a good spot where it's at. So.
Austin, I was going to ask you about item 3. If we looked at the verbiage on our ordinance for appointing planning commission members, I believe that it says nominated by the mayor, approved by city council, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Would it be a good idea to make this more consistent with that? And the only reason I say that is because if it's appointed by the city council, then it becomes, I don't know if it's any different, if it has a different look than it would if it was run the other way.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the trail committee for the longest time has been just passionate people that want to volunteer and do it,
Right.
And so that's how it's been. And, a lot of them have been on the committee for many, many years. So,
and they do
this
a
is
terrific
a
job, I
change
should add.
Change of dynamic. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
To say, okay, you're appointed, you have a term limit. There was some discussion in planning commission about, terms, if they're selected by the city council, what if that, or the mayor, or whoever that might be, if their term ends, does that mean the trail committee person's term ends, or does that continue? I mean, there was some discussion on that, and I don't know. I mean, we could bring it more into line with the planning commission if that's something you'd like to see.
I'm not necessarily talking about the terms matching up with the planning commission.
Yeah.
But the nomination process and the appointment process, that if it's appointed by, because typically the mayor takes feedback from the council to create the group of people that would be appointed. And then the council votes on it once a recommendation is made. And I think I'm just looking at this, it might be a good idea to have this process more consistent with that process.
Same selection process. Yeah.
I think the wording is the mayor appoints with the advice and consent of
The consent, yes.
Craig, apologize. This is something that just came to mind. Years ago, we used, and it's been quite a few years ago, we used to have a city council member that would attend and sit up here at planning commission meetings. And they might have even been a voting member of the planning commission. And I remember that was done away with because of, it seemed like there was an issue of them voting on something and then going and voting on it again at the city council meeting. In this proposal to create this trail committee, if we have a city council member or a planning commission member as one person of that 5-member committee, does that cause any problems?
I don't think it causes a legal problem, but there's always the question of undue influence by a city council member or a planning commission member sitting on a committee that's going to make a recommendation to that same body. From a policy standpoint, I would recommend against that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's exactly, I tried to put that in words and couldn't, but that was the issue back then, and that's why we did away with it. And so maybe you want to have 5 members, non-city council, do not include a planning commission or city council member. And I don't know why that came to mind tonight. I read this earlier.
That's the way I envisioned it, but that there would still be a liaison to the committee that would be an appointed city council member, and that more could do that if they wanted to, just to stay in the loop, but not to necessarily have a vote. Does that make sense?
We could do it similar. So in item 3AI, we could do away with that, strike that out, and then maybe add a city council member to item 4, much in the same way that we have a staff and staff members that support the trail committee, so they could support them in a fashion, but they're not a member, and they don't have
Not a voting member
Right now, though.
That's what it is now. Yeah.
So maybe we could do that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Hey, so a question: if do all the actions of the trail committee, because it's on, say, city, parks and open space, will all of their decisions go through the planning commission ultimately, which would then create that conflict with the planning commission member, or not? Would some or much of it go straight to council?
It seems like the only time the planning commission would be involved is if it changed an ordinance that had to do with the parks, or it changed the nature of the park. And that in that case, it would also then go through the city council.
So I would see the trail committee as being a recommending body. They make recommendations. They're the one, a lot of these committee members we've had are great because they're out actively using the trails. If it's someone like me, I'm not out there doing that. So I can make a project happen, but I don't know necessarily what needs to happen because I'm not a user. So
the title here says Trails Advisory Committee. So they're advisory in nature. They're not.
Right.
Can I ask a further point on that, Lon, to Shane? So walk me through this process. We've got a new trail plan that just came before us. On that trail plan, we've got some new downhill trails going in that aren't going to be for hikers, that will be more, maybe like they have up at Corner Canyon in that area. as an advisory board, do they bring that to us and we determine if that's the type of trail we want to put in there? Is that what it means by advisory?
I think that could be one thing that they would participate on or advise the planning commission and city council. Another, these maps on proposed trails, they're really an A to B, that these alignments, with the exception maybe of that East Lambert Park Trail, haven't been looked at in detail. And so they go out, work with, say, a developer or a developer's engineer or trail consultant or whatever, get an alignment that looks like it will work for everyone, and then that's maybe brought forward to the elected officials for approval, things like that.
Yeah. Which is a little different than it used to be done. When Ron and Daryl,
Yes.
Debbie carved out the upper portion of Rodeo, they just had a good idea and went out and did it. And I don't know if there was a committee that approved that, but it turned out to be a great part of our trail system. I think this is a more organized way to do it, with more people thinking about the process.
Another example would be maybe an assignment from the city council to say, hey, we want these walking only trails in Lambert Park. Can you guys work on the details of what alignment would work? Bring that back. Council approves it and it gets built. So, the other, in kind of their ad hoc committee, they've really organized a lot of projects, like the annual trail day and other various projects. Just done a fantastic job.
They
They've filled a role that we really, for lack of manpower, have not been able to do, and they've been great with that.
Yeah, our Trails Committee has done a terrific job.
Just to reiterate what I was saying then, so for these downhill trails coming out of Three Falls area, are they going to come back to us and say, hey, these are what we're looking to do, here's how it would lay out, is this the type of a trail you want in Alpine? And at that point, the city council will vote on it? Or are they already kind of starting on that process? I'm a little confused on.
Well, I don't think the committee can spend any money.
Right. Yeah.
So anything that has a cost to it, they can't make those decisions. The council they advise, but the council makes those decisions. And I was going to ask Craig, the idea behind this ordinance is to align with what the state requires for committees. So maybe you could look at that and make sure that we have met the criteria that the state asks of municipalities for their committees.
We will do so.
So, a thought along those lines then is sorry, Jason, did I cut you off?
No,
You're good.
Okay. Sorry. I think we've talked a couple times about having, representatives from the Trail Committee come in and kind of give us an update. And since it is advisory, I don't know if we need to codify that, but it seems like it would be a good idea. Maybe it would be worth it to just say, they come in and give an update twice a year or something, because it is an advisory capacity, right? And that way we could be sure that we're understanding what they're seeing and working on, and can give them the support needed. Something along those lines, or you could leave it open, right, as needed, just whenever.
Jason, I do recall we've had reports from the Trails Committee almost regularly at City Council. There's been one of the members here most of the time, and they did come to us for approval from the City Council on a walking only trail. And we did, as a City Council, approve that walking only, with the suggestion that there be others come forward at a future date. And so that it has seemed to be advisory all along. They have done a great job at that. It seems Mayor, as we're talking through this, there's more that needs to be done. In fact, I have several different notes that I would like to, if we're asking Craig to look into the legality things, I would like to point out some things that we ought to address as well.
I was just going to recommend the motion to table until we get some of those things worked out, especially the legal ramifications, to make sure we're in alignment with state law. But also, and I appreciate the insight, because I think when we started this process, we wanted to legitimize the Trail Committee as an authoritative body and have the process match with, the
Line with the state, because
Right.
they are addressing us almost monthly.
Yeah. And and the Trail Committee, as we've already pointed out, has done a terrific amount of work. And I think by creating a better process, they can also get more done if the process is clear. Also, I think there's a potential for us getting in the way, and so they don't get as much done. But hopefully that's where we're creating more efficiencies.
Yeah, let me just give you another scenario that happens all the time with subdivisions. So, you get a raw piece of land, it's got a lot of contour to it or whatever. It comes through the process, gets approved. There's a trail through it. Sometimes it's hard to see exactly how everything's going to lay out until maybe the roads are built and things start coming together. And so we've used the trail committee to take a trail that's shown as A to B on a set of plans to go out and work with the developer and whoever's going to build their trail on the details of that. And I think it's been great that they can do that. And that may be a situation where, some authority is delegated to the committee to take care of that on the ground work, kind of like things have been delegated us to handle administratively in the city. If the city council only meeting 2 times a month, sometimes it can be kind of tough to keep a project moving forward if answers can't be, if someone has to wait 2 weeks to get an answer on some little issue with the trail.
Yeah, but it seems reasonable to say that the trail committee is going to be working on from point A to B, and we approve that. We're not going to know what degree that turn will make and what, exact area, but there's still, if they're going to be making those decisions that we're going from A to B, then I don't think we would hold them up moving that trail along.
Right. And back to finish the answer to Jason's question, I think on, for example, the Three Falls flow trails, I think that's a big enough project that should come back for the city council to have a super majority vote, because it's a change in open space. So you would see that whatever the proposal was.
And I think to Jessica's point, we entrust this committee with the management of that. Once it's approved, we give it to them. And I mean, it's been demonstrated that they know what they're doing. And the trails that they've produced so far have been really great. And they kind of seem to be getting better. So I'm comfortable delegating that responsibility. Once we look at the big picture, that's what we want, let them do what they need to do.
Yeah, and so I think we could work, Craig's been part of this discussion now, and coming in new, and work with him to kind of take all these comments and maybe add some additional language in here and bring it back.
Okay, good deal.
Mayor, I may suggest, I'd like you to look at the removal provision that's in paragraph B,
That was one of my,
where it says the committee can bounce 2 members. I think that's inappropriate. I'm not the policymaker, but
Yeah.
you appoint, the council approves, and they get to serve for their term.
Yeah.
Unless they commit some horrendous whatever.
so Mayor, there's several of those things.
They're caught littering on the trails. They're going to have to get, they got to go.
And I would like,
I agree.
I would like if we're letting Craig look at this some more, I'd like to give him some of my notes of.
Yeah.
Okay.
Please do.
Honestly, I did not look at the packet before tonight. Okay.
So it's great if you pick up on something that we need to know about.
Don't let a committee kick off other committee members.
Okay.
That was going to be my suggestion as well, because it gives the committee a veto power, right? Mayor appoints and council confirms, but then the committee can veto. But maybe a removal provision is still wise, potentially, if someone's inactive. I'd also just note that the word advisory in that first line, it has a typo there. Otherwise.
Great. Thank you. Carla, did you have anything to add before we move forward?
No, I didn't. I
Okay.
think our trail committee's doing an amazing job.
Oh.
Feel like our trails are coming along. There's so many more trails than I thought. You know, they've done a great job. If everything's flowing really well, they're connecting everything. They're connecting the city. I feel like, you know, we've had a vision with the trail master plan and they brought it to life in a beautiful way.
Yeah, I would totally agree.
I'll make a motion that we table ordinance 2020-21.
We have a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by Lon Lotz, second by Jason Thielen, I believe.
That was Greg.
Greg Gordon.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not hearing right tonight. Second by Greg Gordon. Any questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Okay, the motion passes to table. We'll hear from you again, hopefully in the next meeting. And on the note of the quality of trails that we have, if you haven't walked or biked the trails at the north end of town that we've done, they are terrific. They really do. The trail committee has done a wonderful job there. And there's a lot of trail up there. There's a lot more, I think, what was it, 8 miles of trail that we put in?
Seems like.
It's really nice additions. All right, so we'll move on to the next topic. Item C, the outdoor lighting restrictions. So I appreciate the work that the Planning Commission has done on this. This one can get a little complex on the lighting, especially the enforcement end of it. So Austin, go ahead and introduce the topic. And then I'd also like to give Jane a chance to make any comments.
Okay, yeah. So the outdoor lighting ordinance proposal that you have here tonight is something that the Planning Commission has been working on. It's based on a lot of discussion. So the conversation began with the discussion of excessive lighting on homes, lights shining into neighbors' homes, and that's kind of what started this issue. That led into discussion of lighting in general. What other kinds of lights are inappropriate or a nuisance. And so one thing, basically there was a lot of conversation on this, and as the mayor has mentioned, how do you regulate some of this stuff was one of the primary questions that was on the Planning Commission's mind. And so they really focused in on practical ways that this could be enforced without creating additional work for staff or other individuals, or just things that would be hard to prove. And so one of the things that they ended up going with was a lighting curfew, which essentially sets a limit on operating hours for lights, exterior lighting on a structure. And so this would apply to any type of light that's on the outside of a structure. It would be limited to operate within the hours of 7 a.m. to 12 a.m. I'm sorry.
That should be PM, shouldn't it?
Or I'm sorry, it cannot operate outside of those hours. And so there are some exceptions to this. So holiday lighting, landscape lighting were areas where they felt like this is something that shouldn't be affected by that. So Christmas lights, or if you have little lights in your landscaping that shine in your trees, or those solar powered pathway lights in your yard. Those are kind of things that they didn't feel like really were a nuisance to the neighborhood. Other things that they felt were a major impact on neighborhoods were sports courts. They felt like a lot of neighborhoods are seeing, this is something that the city's seeing more and more often, new sports courts with these really high powered LED lights that just shine right into their neighbors' houses, and they're out there playing until, you know, all hours of the night in the summer, basketball or whatever they're doing. And so they felt like that's something that needed to be kind of reined in, and so they proposed, you know, this ordinance here that limits the light operating hours shall be restricted to 7 a.m. to 12 a.m. And also there's some language in here about directing those lights downward and not so that they don't spill onto adjacent property. So these are the ordinances that came out of those discussions. They felt like these were the best solutions that were the most easy to implement and most practical. And I don't know if Jane, if you have any more to add to that, but that's kind of my summary.
Jane?
Yeah, no, I don't necessarily have any more to add to it. This concept, we could take in a number of different directions. I guess I will comment that, you know, there's definitely a lot of challenges as we talked about this, of making something that was reasonably enforceable. Most likely is going to be enforced on a complaint basis. And so we felt like this was a conservative, but a good lighting ordinance. And, you know, we just thought that this would be a good place to start. And, you know, I would love to hear your opinions about if this hits kind of the area that you would like, or if we're looking for something much more restrictive, but we felt like this was a good basic change, and that would begin a restriction process.
Thank you, Jane. Lon, I know you had some thoughts on this.
Yeah, I do. Outdoor lighting talks about two different things, A and B: sports courts, house and accessory structures. I know we have signs that have some lighting that is outdoor lighting. It could be considered, but I don't know if that's in the sign ordinance. But here we're talking about night lighting and curfews and that. We did get the school to agree to shut their sign down at a certain time. I know that, but that might be something that we ought to look at. But as far as some of this other stuff, I feel some of it's pretty difficult to define, really, other than it says all lighting. That's pretty inclusive in everything, and I don't know that that's what I'd like to see in it. If we're having problems with the soffit lighting or the fascia lighting or things like that, then maybe we ought to be more specific on that. I personally don't like the item B as much. The sports court area, I do know that that's one thing that we've been trying to focus on because it is a complaint and a problem more than anything else. And so those are some of my thoughts on that item B. I'd probably even eliminate that right now, the way it's worded and the way it is.
And Mayor, sorry if you're done, Lon.
I'm done.
One more thing I forgot to mention is, so we did also receive some public comment on this. And so the feeling was there were some residents who, you know, they're widows or whatever, and they like to leave their front porch light on at night. It helps them feel safe, secure. And so they weren't in favor of the idea of having a light curfew. You know, they felt like that I want my lights on all night. Or other parents that they leave the lights on for their kids, their teenage kids, to come home at night. And when the lights go off, that's when they know their kids are home, and that kind of a thing. So
yeah,
I just wanted to
it's a difficult thing because we all need some degree of light on our property. And I leave my lights on my porch because, you know, I've had some issues there, toilet papering and things like that come with teenagers. And so what I don't want to create is something that compromises security for people. But I also hear a lot of feedback from residents who say they miss the days where Alpine was dark. Now, it's not going to be completely dark because we have a lot more people here than used to be. But I think there are some examples in town where the light is so radiant coming from a certain home or a group of homes that it's almost blinding. I'm coming around corners driving home at night, and I just can't believe how much light I'm facing coming from some of our structures. So how do we strike that balance in a community that would like to remain fairly dark, but we also need to provide security and some degree of illumination on our property? And that's why I wouldn't see, my thoughts on this were not pointed toward people not being able to leave a porch light on overnight. It was more toward some buildings that I've seen. One example, I counted 40, and it's a real number, 40 lights coming off an addition. And it puts out so much light, it can't be ignored, and people are having to get shutout blinds, or what do they call those, blackout blinds, to protect themselves to be able to sleep at night. And so, I mean, I don't know if others have comments on that, but how do we strike that balance? How do we get there in a way that's fair?
Well, would all lighting shall be directed downward and not spill on adjacent properties? Would that solve that?
I think that goes a long ways to get there.
I don't know if we need the other parameters, but just that give us enough.
Yeah, I think that combined with the intensity of the light, and to our discussion earlier about enforcement, it becomes real tough to somebody who's charged with the responsibility of running around with a light meter to gauge who's putting off too much light, and that is pretty tough. But yeah, Jessica, I think the direction of the light has a lot to do with it. But then in one case that I know of, the building itself is quite high. And even though they're pointed straight down, it still creates a lot of impact.
Fill out, I know it's not, it maybe Craig can help us with a legal term, but if you're having to get blackout blinds because your neighbor's light is spilling into your bedroom, then it's reached that threshold.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mayor, there's a lot of different guidelines all over, and I've looked at other city statutes and whatnot. If you truly want to become a black light, a black sky city, there's guidelines under that and organizations that will help us and whatnot. But maybe what you're looking at is, if you're worried about the lumens, you can do city ordinances that specifically specify what wattage and how many lumens you can have per application, whether it's house lighting or whether it's sports court or whether it's accessory structure or whatever. We can put maximum limits on those. That's totally within our reach.
Yeah, thank you, Carla.
You could look at that. But
And I think that this is another topic that we could easily have an initial discussion about, and it's probably not going to happen in one meeting. Turn it back to the Planning Commission with the council of Greg.
But as far as the outdoor lighting on part 3A, where it specifically addresses sports courts, I don't know if you guys read the email by Ed Bush. He was advocating for 10 p.m. as opposed to 12 a.m. And it seemed like when I was researching other cities, in Utah, out of Utah, some of the more conservative neighborhoods, and even, more metropolitan areas, most of the cities that did have restrictions on sport courts, they were limited to either 10 or 11 o'clock, it seemed like. I would personally be more in favor of the 11 o'clock. I do think 12 a.m. is a little bit late, but I feel like, especially in the summer months, 10 a.m. is cutting it a little bit short. Me personally, I'd rather have my kids playing out in a sports court than being somewhere in the dark. So my personal, I would be more apt to pass this if it were maybe from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m.
Yeah, and to that point, I agree. That's something that stood out to me. And I wondered if we, instead of put a time, put a certain time after sundown. I mean, I know people want to use their lights, and they wait for the sun to go down to do that. But to Carla's point, in July and June, sometimes it isn't even dark at 10 o'clock. And
Mayor.
In December, it's dark at 5. Yeah.
Mayor. Oh, sorry. This is Jane. We discussed that, but if you say 2 hours after dark or something, in the middle
7 o'clock in
that means
December.
7 p.m. and in the middle of the summer, that means 11 p.m. And so we looked at that and felt like that giving an amount of time after dusk wouldn't work with the variation we have in the state where we are.
Yeah. I like Carla's comment there. I would favor something like 10:30 or maybe 11. It's just sort of a middle ground there. I feel like if it's consistent at midnight, that may drive neighbors crazy. Maybe 10:30 maybe gives them some time. 11 seems very reasonable, I think, if I'm playing. But
Yeah.
And I
Jason,
think
do you have any thoughts?
Oh, sorry. I was going to say in the wintertime, I don't think it's going to be that late. It's going to get cold and you know what I mean? I think people will naturally go turn them off earlier. That's my assumption.
Yeah, my thoughts kind of follow along the lines. I wanted to change the sports court to 11 p.m. as opposed to 12 a.m. And I had a concern, and some people I talked with had concerns about keeping porch lights on. So I think we're talking about the same things. The one question I have that hasn't been answered is maybe more of a legal thing, but how is it determined, the definition, and shall not spill onto adjacent property? How is that determined if it's spilling onto your property or not?
There's certain ordinances that I've seen throughout Utah and also throughout the country that they regulate the number of lumens so many feet from property line or some measurable spot. And I don't know what a lumen is. I don't know if it's a unit of measurement, but you got to remember we may be creating a light Nazi that's going to go around and check all these things.
Yeah.
It's like noise ordinances. So I think we need to be very careful on what we do. And I can tell you, as a former sport court owner with 3 kids that play ball in college, basketball, the best ball games are between 10 o'clock and midnight. Or 1 and 2 if dad comes out and plays. I mean, so.
Not for the neighbors, but yeah, I get it.
Well, fortunately, I lived on an acre and there was a pasture behind me, so it didn't matter.
Yeah.
So,
And I think with a lot of things, it's Jane mentioned earlier that this would be complaint driven, the enforcement. And what I think is helpful to people who do have an issue with it, who have a complaint, is they have something to base that complaint on. That there's certain guidelines that we've already established as a city, tolerance levels, and that if somebody really does have an issue and we are called out, then we do have some level of measurement that we can enforce for that neighbor. An example is I know one household right now that there's a sports court near them, and it's not even right next to them, but the lights are angled in a way so that it lights up their bedrooms at night. And if they're left on accidentally or there's a game going on, they just can't use that bedroom. So if they were going to call the city and say, hey, I've got this issue, and it's nice to have the city to have something to fall back on, that some degree of measurement that could help that family.
I had some of the same thoughts, but I can wait.
Go ahead, Shane, real quick.
I had some of the same thoughts that Jason did. On the sports courts, it's very general, the description of what's allowed. And so I think if someone, we get a complaint, so our code enforcement officer goes out and investigates and decides there'll be a citation and they can appeal to our hearing officer. So they come into the hearing officer. The hearing officer has, and Craig can jump in here wherever he wants, they basically have our ordinance as the guide of what is allowed and what's not. It doesn't give them very much. So then if you go to the other end of the spectrum, well, first of all, we don't require a building permit for an open air sports court. So if you're regulating lumens, you probably should have I think they call them a photometric study done first. That should be submitted to show that how many lumens are going to escape beyond a certain perimeter. We've had these before, I can't say that I'm, even with an engineering background, that I'm qualified to really review one and say, yeah, that meets some number that we don't even currently have in our ordinance. And so it seems like it's, if you get too detailed, do we have the staff that can manage that on the front end and on the back end on the enforcement side?
Yeah.
I think that's what Craig was alluding to with his comments
Yeah.
as well.
I think you really got two standards here that you need to look at. One's the bleeding over into the neighborhood, and the other one is time and use. Do you want a sport court to be used at all hours of the day? In a previous engagement at Murray City, we had a sport court on 53rd South and 5th or 6th East, and it was in the front yard. And that was the only one that was ever built in the front yard because we changed it after that. But they had lights going all over the place, and we couldn't regulate it. So we finally said, I don't remember the time. It's been too many years. 10 or 11 o'clock, you're done, period. And that's an easier standard. You go to the hearing officer and he says, was it on at 10:05? Yeah, well, 10 o'clock says turn it off. But then the bleed over, that's a much more difficult issue, I think.
Well, I walked a property that I had a bunch of complaints about, and I did it at night, and I could see there was light being cast from this one home clear across the street into the neighbor's yard across the street. And I mean, that was a pretty clear violation of what should have been happening. Yeah, what felt right. And others are going to be a lot more difficult to interpret. But there are some violators, I think and they're not violators because we don't have an ordinance right now, but there are some people who are indiscriminate about where they throw their light, and that it creates a problem for people in the neighborhood.
Mayor, if I may, I received a complaint on the phone one time, probably a couple months ago, and the guy was complaining about a sports court. And what his neighbor had done is he had put the lights on his property, and he had faced all the lights towards his neighbor's house. They didn't point on his house, so it doesn't matter what time or what of the day it's on. And his neighbor did not like that. So I told him, well, we don't have a light ordinance. There's nothing we can do about it. So get some blackout, basically get some blackout curtains. But that's a clear example of, I mean, they're directing their light onto their neighbor's property on purpose,
So we
And
could
that
probably
seems to
write
me like
something- Sorry, Greg. We could probably write something that will easily handle those clear ones. There's going to be some that are going to fall in, that other space, but time and use is easy. And then the lighting, we can at least catch the very, ones that are clearly impacting their neighbors.
Yeah, and I don't think it's going to be hard to write an ordinance that would address those clear cut situations. Before I go on, I want to give Greg a chance to chime in.
Yeah, just briefly, it seems to me that would be maybe a reasonable measure to consider if the sport court lighting is directed at the homeowner's home. It sort of puts in a natural control there, where it gives them light but no nuisance if they face it away towards their neighbors. Secondly, let's see, I was a bit of a caution here is, even if we set these lights, I don't know how, if it's directed downward and there's 40 lights with all those soffit lights, it could still be very bright until midnight all the time. And so I think that might be a concern. There's different light tones or brightnesses or number of lights or maybe hours at a certain height, beyond porch lights or a few, dim garage lights. And then lastly, on sport courts, Jane, I think originally there was some discussion of setting a light height maximum of, was it 20 feet? And I think it was at Highland that had a max of like 14 or 13 or something. What did you decide on having a maximum height?
Yeah, Austin might have to help me with this. We looked at a height, and then for whatever reason, I can't remember, decided that wasn't necessary. And it might be because of restrictions we have on those buildings or courts. Austin, do you recall why we went away from a height.
Yeah, I think the height thing was, well, why don't they put it the same height that they have the fence? You know, typically you'll have some kind of fencing around a sports court. So the discussion was, well, why don't you put it maybe the height of the fencing? So we do have an ordinance that allows it, interior fences for sports courts to go up to 12 feet in height.
For tennis.
You know, and so I guess the idea was maybe, you know, that might not work for certain. I don't know if 12 feet would be quite high enough for certain sports or activities or whatever. So,
Well, I can see where height would come into play too on some of the homes that are being built to the maximum height, and they have soffit lighting that's LED and very bright. It's hard to control that light where it goes too. So I know in a couple of cases that I've driven around and seen in town, it doesn't matter how well they've directed that light because it's in a pitch and it's at the height that it is. It's pretty impactful.
Yeah, height could come into play. One of the struggles is balancing, like, are we just making up rules for situations that don't exist? Or are we, you could go so extensive with this, and trying to put some parameters around what we want and think is reasonable to do was really the challenge in this for us.
Well, I would say that, there's 3 notes that I've made of myself here. The sports court issue, I think, is similar to the structural issues. If you have light that is going beyond your property line at a certain lumen level, as Craig pointed out, there are ways to regulate that. And there may not be great ways to enforce it, but at least we can come up with an ordinance that would address the issues. So that if we do run into a problem, we have an ordinance to enforce. And then to me, there's a question on the lumens. Can we, and you can't get too complex with these things or it becomes completely ineffective. But is there a way that we could say within these certain hours, you can discharge so many lumens, but at this hour, whether it's from your soffits or any other part of your house, if it's exterior, it has to be reduced to this many lumens so that you can still leave your porch light on or other lights that for security reasons, or there's no reason to be blasting light on your house at 3 o'clock in the morning. And in some of these cases I've driven by when I leave early to go fishing, I'm leaving at 4:30 in the morning and these houses are just blasting light. And
You know what, Troy? When I was researching other cities and what they do have ordinances like that. After a certain time, like 10 o'clock at night, they say they have to reduce it by 50%, 30%, or they have a lumen number that they can So, I mean, that's totally within the range. We could do that.
To me, that seems like a logical way to approach it because you can still have the lighting on your house. You just have to, we're just going to regulate the time in which you can use it.
Isn't the way it's written, doesn't it exclude security lighting and allows for motion sensors? I was thinking that, that was the case. We could do something as a reduction, but we kind of thought the goal was more of a dark sky. And so I believe it was, that's where the thought came from to have it off. Those housing lights should be off after midnight. But security lighting was allowed, and you could have motion sensors, which are so easy to install even retroactively, as long as they had a timer on them. So that was kind of the solution for that.
What's security lighting?
I do. Feel free. Okay.
I mean,
Any
what would
kind of
be
lighting that's
security lighting?
on a timer that's motion detected?
So you're talking about just motion sensor lights, not just because, I mean, theoretically, couldn't you say my lighting under my eaves, that's for my security? Or are we going to define security lighting very specifically and
Or
narrow?
maybe we change the terminology from security lighting to motion detected lighting.
Yeah, because if you term it security lighting, that definition is going to broaden in everybody's mind. And well, this is security light, I need it.
Right.
Yeah. What if you could say front porch lights excluded if you wanted to.
Yeah, that I would be more amenable to.
Mm-hmm.
Or, if you're going to be very specific about what security and define what security lighting is.
torch is 34 feet high in the air.
Yeah, but if
Yeah.
it's on a motion sensor, it can only be on for 5 minutes. So you could say motion sensor lighting and front porch lighting excluded.
For sure. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like we've got some input that the planning commission could take back and maybe retool this a little bit, and maybe with some guidance from Craig and our city attorneys to maybe come up with some better language that would be a more effective ordinance.
Troy,
Yes.
I would like some direction on what the council's appetite is for actually going into the measurement of lumens. Is that what you guys, I'd like to know if that's what you're really after, because that's a whole nother discussion, you know, and if that's where you would like this to end up, I would like to have us, you know that kind of, have that guidance from the beginning so that we could head that direction.
Okay. Thank you for putting a point on it. Jessica, what are your thoughts on lumens versus other types of control?
I think if it gives us a way to measure and it's not an arbitrary where the code enforcer has to try to figure out what he's doing, anything that is a standard out there in other communities that we can follow, if it's defined by lumens, then that's how it's defined.
Yeah. Good.
Mayor, can I interject real quick?
Sure.
So I just did a couple of Google searches because I remember the lumens is not probably the value that we're looking for.
Foot candles?
Probably it is.
Yeah.
Foot
I was going to suggest
candles is the measure for illumination on a surface.
Mm-hmm.
And usually when you see a lighting diagram, it'll have numbers on there. And as you get further away from the lights, those foot candles go down.
Yeah.
And then they have overlapping and everything. And so, I don't know.
Wait,
Challenging
Well,
because most of us, including myself, don't know.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to become educated.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I want to go with this, is that we could easily say it's not enforceable. We don't know about it, but then we're cheating the residents out of some type of help and enforcement.
Right.
And so I think we just got to dig in and figure out what we can do to help
How we
mitigate.
accomplish it and how it
so
Yeah.
I have a question. I thought the measurement of light output is measured in lumens only for the LED lighting. It's not for traditional light bulbs. That's where the candlelight power comes in.
Well,
It's
there
measured
are,
differently, right?
so foot candles and lumens can be used for either type of lighting, I think, interchangeably, but they're different measurements.
lumens measure how much light you are getting from a bulb.
From a what?
A bulb.
Oh, a bulb, yeah. So
Lumens
foot
are
candles.
used on any type of device that emits a light. So even like a TV screen
Yeah.
or something's going
Right.
to have a lumen count.
So one of the reasons I feel strongly about this is in my line of work, I sometimes will do a lighting analysis for our clients, and the whole message is ergonomics, and we all want to practice good ergonomics to maintain good posture and body strength and core strength, but lighting has a lot to do with your visual ergonomics. And when you have a sharp contrast between a very bright light and a dark space, your eyes dilate and contract very rapidly to try to keep up with those changes in that contrast, and that creates fatigue. So if you're a neighbor sitting in your backyard and you're enjoying the darkness and maybe some dim lights, but your neighbor next door has got really bright lights, it is a true imposition on you physically. And it can be as well when you're in your house and you feel the light coming in and you're trying to achieve some darkness. So there are health issues that are based on your exposure to light as well. But I think as a city, we should find some way to create some guidelines and enforceability to that.
I think what I was thinking here to myself, what am I really trying to say? I don't know if any of us have the expertise to create an ordinance.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's almost like you need a lighting consultant that knows
We're
what
new
they're
territory.
talking about.
Yeah.
Because I don't think any of us, we know conceptually what we're trying to accomplish, but how we put that into words and everything. I'm not
Yeah.
sure any of us are qualified to do that. So we might need some help.
Yeah, and I think we should get the help. Just to kind of bring it all back, the way I'm looking at it is we can give this back to the Planning Commission and have them focus on the way light radiates from a sports court, the way the light radiates from a structure, and what type of lumen or foot candle measurements we can start looking at to create a better blend of light and darkness. Does that seem fair? Is there anything else that we need the Planning Commission to address specifically?
I have a further question on it. Are you guys interested in the no lights after midnight or something? Or are you just interested in that control night long? Or are you interested in that control at all times so that it's not too bright, but no light or dark sky after midnight?
What do you think, Greg?
I think after midnight, it's got to be very dim, right? And, and still, not extremely bright, before midnight or whatever time. One other note, I did see some write-up that said that security lights or motion lights typically last 5 to 10 minutes. And I don't know if that's some sort of standard. It might be worth considering going 10 minutes on the security light. Just something to think about if that's the products that are sold by default.
Okay. Thanks, Greg. Carla?
No, I think I've already said everything.
Okay, good. Jason? You're muted, Jason.
Yeah, I've said everything too as well.
Okay. Lon or Jessica, anything else?
Nothing for me.
Jessica?
No.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion, or do we need a motion to just send it back to the Planning Commission? I guess we really don't. Do we need a motion for that?
I think you do if you're going to send it back for
Okay.
further study and rework, yes.
All right. Ready for a motion? I can see Lon is refusing to make a motion so that somebody else will. Do we have a motion to table and send it back?
I'll make a motion that we table the outdoor lighting ordinance for further study on the appropriate way to have good neighbors. The appropriate way to have the sports court lighting and other outdoor lighting resolved.
So can I make a suggestion to the motion? I don't have a vote, but do you want to make any reference to the unit of measurement for light pollution or light flooding, and define the difference between the sports court or a play surface and a structure?
No, I wouldn't. That's why
Okay.
I didn't want
Wanna
to
keep it
make a
vague?
motion originally. So
Okay. We have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Motion by Lon, second by Jessica. Any question on the motion? All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Mayor, can I make one more comment?
Sure, Jane.
I think Shane hit it on the head as to why we're struggling to come up with something. Is I feel like we don't have the knowledge that we need to feel confident that we're making a ordinance that we can actually measure. And so I don't know how we could go about getting some help, or if that's something Jason or Jed could research before we come. But we're just like you. We don't know what is actually reasonable to measure and what tools are available and things like that. So if we could get a little bit of help or some direction on how, other than one of us becoming an expert in the field and spending, hours and hours studying it.
Yeah. Craig, how much knowledge do you have of cities who have ordinances similar to what we're trying to accomplish? And
I think there's a few. My recollection is the city of Holiday did this 5, 6, 7 years ago. It's interesting. If you go to ksl.com right now, Park City wants to become a dark sky city.
Yeah.
Ivans is, Cayenta, I think, is also. So I think there's a bunch of help out there. There's a service for the city attorneys that we maintain ourselves. It's a listserv. We can throw a question out tomorrow to the various city attorneys through the City Attorneys Association and say, any of you dealt with these type of issues, and see what response we get back.
yeah,
I mean,
I'd like to be able to tap into whatever experts they're using as well. Maybe
For
get
sure.
a couple of names to get our staff some help.
There may be some architects around that do this. I know that there was some issues in Holiday when they rebuilt the city center at Murray Holiday Road in 2030s or Holiday Boulevard about flooding going over because they built a mini Harmons and a bunch of things in the core of the city when they redeveloped it. And we can take a look. We'll do that tomorrow through the City Attorneys Association and see what kind of response we get. We may not get any.
The city managers have a similar listserv, and I did send this out maybe a year ago, and most of the responses were good luck.
Yeah.
There were a couple like Eni was considering something back then, but nobody had anything. I think I was more talking about soffit lighting. The sports court stuff it wasn't something that was brought forward as much back then.
Yeah.
But so maybe we're cutting a little bit of new ground around here. I don't know. I'm sure there's some little bits and pieces.
Yeah.
But there's lighting consultants out there. We can talk to our street light guys and they can probably tell us who may be a consultant that could help.
Yeah. And I would think that if we focus on regulating the lumens or the foot candles and the hours, then that becomes an easier way to apply the ordinance to even people who would otherwise be grandfathered in if we try to control the number of lights that go on a building. If we could retroactively enforce the number of foot candles that come out at a certain hour on really every household. So I think that would be a safer way to go, at least in the beginning.
Has anybody got a connection with LDS Church Architectural Department, the building department? Because in a previous life, I handled some of the building issues for the local stakes. And there's a lot of complaints about LDS Church parking lot lead over with lights.
Yeah. They've also had to deal with issues with temples in other states that are near the freeway or near residents.
Well, Washington, D.C. is a good example.
Yep. There were accidents on that one.
Yeah. On the Beltway there.
Mayor, I've noticed Draper does have a good set of ordinances on this that I've seen, and it's quite detailed. That would be probably one to look at. Also, just a thought. I mean, I have a Lumimeter. I don't think it was that expensive. One idea might be, you go to the sidewalk by the property line or whatever and try to set a standard, from the sidewalk.
Yeah, I used to have one, and you can go to photography stores and they sell them, and they're a couple $100 for a good meter. Okay, thank you.
We have some work to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And one more note on the direction of the lighting. In one particular neighborhood that I went to, where the house was emitting so much light that everybody could feel it and see it at night. I looked down the street and other neighbors had really lit their house as well, but their soffit lighting was all angled back at the house. Nothing projected even out into the yard. It just illuminated the house. And so there are things you can do with the angles of the lights that would help really better neighbors, to Lon's point. All right, so we'll move on to the next topic of that should be equally engaging, as is the garage doors.
Okay, all right, garage doors. So this is something that the Planning Commission, like the outdoor lighting ordinance that they've been working on, much to the same effect. They want to limit the, the visual impact and of something in the neighborhood. So after a lot of discussion, there was some discussion on, this may not work. Garage door ordinance would be very restrictive in for example, the TR 10,000 zone, the downtown area. We have very narrow lots. And if you want to have a 2-car garage on one of those lots, it's going to take up a majority of your frontage. And so, it's difficult to measure. Let's say a lot of cities, they take percentages, like certain percentage of the facade can only be garage doors, like only 50% or 60%. And so the conversation on that was, maybe this ordinance, if we do enact a percentage, it doesn't apply to our TR 10,000 zone. And so they decided to really focus in on the half-acre and the 1-acre lots. And looking at that, there's some conversation on houses with 3-car garages and how restrictive can we be without eliminating houses that don't seem unreasonable, that's totally fit into the neighborhood that they're in. And so they felt like a good balance was 60%. The width of the front facade of the house could be garage doors. So, and there's a definition in here that goes into more specifically, but essentially it's the garage door itself and then any area in between. So if you had multiple garage doors, those areas in between each of those garage doors would also be counted in that percentage. And so the idea is you don't want to just have a house that's nothing but garage doors, especially if you're on a half-acre or 1-acre lot. And so 60% was the number that they came back with. And then also there was the discussion about larger doors. So for like an RV or a boat or larger equipment, they felt like, there are houses, they're going to have these, and most of the time they're going to face the street, because when you back a trailer into your driveway, you just want a straight shot it right into the garage. You don't want to have to angle it or anything like that. So it felt unreasonable to say you can't have none of the you should be able to have some of those larger garage doors. And so they felt like a good balance would be having 2 larger garage doors. And so those are the 2 parts of this ordinance. That's what they've kind of come up with, and they've recommended for the city council tonight. So.
Hey, Austin, a question, if I may, Mayor.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so it sounds like that last line, what that's really doing is limiting your sort of RV garage doors. You could have 2 of those, and then you could have as many as you can fit within 60% of your facade. And if you're on a corner, it's facade and sort of, well, I guess it's 60% of the front facade, right? But then you could have some taller doors in there. Is that correct?
You could have some tall. Yeah, the idea is you could have some taller doors mixed in with that 60%, so that if you wanted to have a 2-car garage and then you had one for your boat, you could do that, or it gave you that flexibility to do that.
Yeah, and I think a standard garage door is 8 feet feet tall.
That's the average, and so this did come up in conversation. So we thought, the average is 8. That's kind of the standard garage size, but then the conversation came up, a lot of the houses in Alpine are kind of custom houses, and some garage doors that you may have an arched garage door. And so the highest point of that arch is going to be taller than 8 feet. And so that's where they felt like 10 feet was a good number, because it allowed for custom sizes. but at the same time, it didn't feel like it was excessively tall.
Okay.
Well, the way I understand that, though, the way you have it worded there, that you can have two doors that are greater than 10 feet tall, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
And why
So
did you
in one case, we have a home that faces two streets. It's a corner lot, and the entire lot, what was a half-acre lot, is now dedicated to an addition that stretches from the neighboring lot out to a regular setback of 30 feet off the street on the other end of the other lot. And it's full of RV size garage doors that now face two streets. And so in that case, the side, which would be allowed? What would be allowed? Just two on the front, or two on the side, or a combination of the two?
So
you draw it.
Yeah, there's a couple of ways. So, I mean, the way that this would be, that we've interpreted this is kind of like our setback ordinance. So a corner lot has essentially two front setbacks.
Mhm.
So if you had a home with garage doors, the same would, those would both be considered fronts to your house, because you're fronting two public streets. So the idea was those would both count against you, your percentage. So if you had garages on one side, garages on the other, that would count against that, the 60%.
Not 60% on one side, 60% on the other side, 60%
No, it's
combined.
Total.
Of the two frontages.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we worded it like that, Austin. I thought it was
worded,
60%.
yeah, I mean, the way it's written is the front facade of the house. So it comes down to how do you interpret what the front facade of the house is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
because
so
I have a corner lot, and and I think this is pretty consistent around town. On corner lots, it's either one side or the other of the garage that you're using for doors. So in my case, for example, I've used none of the frontage of my home, but I have used the side. I did a side entry garage off the other street, and so in that case, it's the entire width of the side of my house. I've got 3 garage doors. So how would this code apply to that?
Well, yeah, the way that the way that I'm understanding it, and it sounds like Jane understands it differently, but if you're on your corner lot, we'd take your front of your house that has no garage doors, and we'd say, okay, that's X number, and then we'd add that to the garage part and say, okay, is the garage greater than 60% of those two sides that face the street?
Combined.
Okay.
So in that case, somebody like me would be okay, because you're using the math from the front of the house too.
So you're saying by definition, a corner lot has the facade is both, because the setbacks, where the setbacks are 30 feet.
They're both.
And so you would use that as an entire measurement.
We don't consider, for many purposes in our ordinance, we don't consider that as a side yard.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I just wanted to know if we needed to word this, not that I didn't understand it that way, but
There's probably a better way to write it. I'm sure.
exactly. I don't know that is clear.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could say any street. It references the street in 2 places. I wonder if you could say any street, and that would, make that clear to the reader that it's, on a corner lot or something. It would apply to both.
Or what if you just do a separate ordinance for corner lots? Or
Yeah,
have
maybe we
another
just write
line?
one and say,
Hey,
we just
Carla,
have to add another part. Yeah.
Carla, could you speak a little closer into your mic?
I've had a headset. My mouth is right next to the mic. No, but I mean, it seems like there's a little bit of confusion, and with what the ordinance says, why not add another line? For instance, of corner lots, this is what it is, and just make it more clear. Because it seems like there's confusion between all of us on what it really means.
Yeah.
Because
An easy way would just be after the first sentence in this proposed ordinance, you could just add a second sentence that then says corner lots, the front facade shall be considered both, shall be both, let's see, frontages on public streets or something like that. I mean, that's the idea, but there's a better way to say it.
so, Troy,
Have a second
with your
sentence.
house, it could be an issue. I mean, I have no idea how wide your house is and what the width of your garages are, but I mean, theoretically, if someone's on a corner lot and, you know, they have their house, their front facade is just all house, and then they have a side on the other side of the corner or, you know, on the adjacent street, they've got maybe 2 large garages or oversized garages. Couldn't that be over 60% of the facade, of the total facade, but still be within what I would consider a normal range? Do you know what I'm saying?
I think. I'm not sure quite understand where you're getting, what you're.
So let's say that
describing.
your, you know, the front of your house is maybe 120 feet.
Mhm.
Okay. And you want to do, you know, maybe 2-car garages that are oversized. Because you said that on the side of your house, you have your garage on the full length of the side of your house.
Mhm.
Well, what does that measure?
What is
it
that?
that
What?
steep? What's the measurement? Do you know? Is it, so let's say, okay, let's just say, we'll make it easy. Let's say the front facade of the house is 100 feet, 100 feet wide. Okay. What if your garage is 70 feet on the side, but it's all garage on the one side? That's not within our city ordinance of 60%. That's only 70 feet for garage if it's only on the side. I'm not sure.
This also does not include the space to the sides of the garage doors to Carta, which,
No,
so this is.
no. Austin said that it did.
No,
between.
it's
I think
between, but not on the edges.
From one.
Oh, not on the edges. Okay.
Yeah. So if you've got if your oversized garage is the way most of them are, your edges are going to be the larger piece,
Okay.
not in between.
Yeah.
So they could do 2 oversized double garages and then they can do 3 or 4 regular size. I don't know.
I'm
It's
personally having a hard time figuring out why it even
Yeah.
matters. Only on this one situation in this neighborhood have we come across that, because everywhere else, I don't know how you get that much, use up that much.
I thought the same thing, Lon. I was like, who are we picking apart this time?
It's, I'm just thinking about all the huge houses there are, and they do have a lot of garage doors on some of them, but it doesn't look out of place. I think that an accessory building or something that's on the side might be the thing that we look at as far as how big and how many doors go in that.
It's not an
versus-
accessory building though.
Yeah, I know, but I don't know. I do.
And I guess to your point, Lon, when you know, we don't see it very often, but we could see it more in the future. And I think one of the things that I'm considering is, you know, in a subdivision where we have fairly consistent architecture. Now, and by that, what I'm saying is everybody has a different style home, but they all have a certain flavor. I don't know if I'm describing what I'm thinking very well, but when then you have a building that drops into the middle of that neighborhood that is such a different, such a contrast. There's no continuity, and so it's hard to forecast everything that anybody might want to do in the future, right? But I think you have to play to worst case scenario in some things.
Well, I hear what you're saying there, and I don't disagree with that. I'm just trying to think of some of the architecture of some of the homes that have a garage that sort of has a breezeway through it, offset. That garage that's that is connected to the home, but as it's independent, is completely full of garage doors. Now, do you have to calculate then is that an independent building? Then you calculate that it's consuming more than 60% of that part of the face of the house? Or do you count then across the breezeway over to the other side and count that part of the house as part of the combined total 60%? So what I'm saying is it's, I would have to see it drawn out to see what you're really, what you're trying to spell out with this ordinance to make it even make sense to me on that.
Well, and there are,
It-
I apologize to those of you who aren't, oh, I'm walking away from my mic. Go ahead, Greg.
In that house that was kind of recognized as an issue here for this matter, did anyone measure? I'm wondering if that particular garage addition, did that exceed 60%? Because there was already a home next to it. Did that for sure exceed 60 even there?
Yeah, so that's my point, Greg. I don't know if we counted the attached portion of that house to the addition and count that all as the cumulative total, and then see, it may not exceed it, and they may be able to put it in based on what we're seeing here.
Could I make a comment real quickly? One of the things that got us started on this was the fact that as Alpine ages, people may buy adjacent lots or demolish homes and build across lots. That's kind of how this started, if you guys will remember. And in that house situation, it is in fact what happened was an adjacent lot was purchased. And so the home is on an existing lot, and then the adjacent lot, the entire both sides of the street, the full facing street on both street facing on the new additional lot are all garages.
Essentially an entire lot is dedicated to garage. Big one.
Exactly.
But it's
Both
like
the
an
full
accessory building then,
facing,
right?
But it's
yes,
attached.
the full facing.
It's
Not
all,
it would just be considered part of the house. It's not an accessory building.
Yeah.
yeah. That's the worst case scenario,
Mhm.
right? Most people aren't going to do that. But
Yeah.
in this case, it happened, and it's been a pretty big impact on the neighborhood.
But our point was that it could happen more as the city ages, and as people want to build bigger homes, they may buy two lots in an area and combine them for a bigger home because the city will be built out. And so it was like looking to the future of what areas like Holiday and places like that have to consider.
I was going to use my diagram, but it's a terrible diagram, so I don't even want to go there.
I like it though. What are you referring?
What is it?
Well, it's a
Well,
house
I was
with 4
looking at-
garage doors.
I apologize to those of you who can't see this on the Zoom, but you have a house, sometimes there's a corner cutout and there's garage doors facing each side. So my question is, how would this be counted? Is that side or frontage? Because
Is it a corner lot?
No, it's not a corner lot. Let's say it's not a corner lot.
okay, because you could take it either direction.
Correct.
And
Because we don't have that many corner lots that would have that kind of house on it probably,
Right.
but you could. I mean,
yeah,
If it's not a corner lot, then the bottom one is, I'm assuming the bottom is the frontage, right?
mhm.
yes, the streets down below.
That's just the same as a side entry garage. There's no difference.
It wouldn't count then is what.
Not count.
See.
Okay. So this is a wiggly one.
So Craig, how would you read that and enforce something like that even?
I'm going to ask for a continuance. I don't
And
take it under advice.
I would. I think that this is yet one more
yeah, needs work.
merits some looking into.
I do too.
And if I'm going to make all the tabling motions today, I'll table this one.
I'll make one.
Let's hear it, Jessica.
So I'll make a motion to table. I don't have it in front of me, the discussion about garage door sizes.
Yeah. The
Pull it back up.
It's under 2020-20.
Oh, 2020, yeah. 2020-20.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to table ordinance 2020-20.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Mayor, while we're on the topic, can I just add one quick point? I just tried to take
Sure.
a quick estimation of that one house, and to me, it looks like the garage frontage, even with all of that, is about 64% potentially. So that one may not be that far over as much as it is. So we may want to take a look at if
Yeah.
you know that's a number that can work, or maybe it's just a maximum width or something facing the road. So.
But I think some of that is dictated too by the height of the garage door and the height of the building. So there's a lot of calculations to go into this. I think it can be very complex.
Yeah.
Thank you, Greg. Okay, let's have a vote on the motion to table. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Hi.
Aye.
I think that's unanimous. Motion passes. So we'll see this again down the road after a little bit more thought and research go into it. All right, last up, let's talk about the trail in Lambert Park. The walking trail. Austin?
Okay, so this walking trail is located on the east side of Lambert Park, the southeast, just above the water tank that's over there. The alignment, if you can, so these images that we have here would show where the actual property line is. If you go up there, you'll see, and we've all visited, we've gone up there as the city, well, some of the members of city council, I should say, have gone up there. And so that there's a fence that exists up there. It's not on the current property line. And so the idea is to get a walking trail as close to that property line as we possibly can. And we'd also like to include some type of structure up there. And so this rendering here shows kind of where the new fence line could potentially be in relation to that trail. This trail was shown on the trail master plan that we looked at earlier tonight. So that's something when we adopt the trail master plan, this trail would be adopted as well. As far as, building this trail, we're late in the season. So the earliest possible date that this could be, we could start working on this alignment would be next spring. And again, this is, to get a trail and a kiosk and a structure kind of closer to that shooting area that's on the southeast side of Lambert Park. And hopefully create a presence there, make it feel like, that's not a place where you should be doing that.
Now, when we were up there on our field trip, we talked about timing and how quickly we could get some things done. I know the trail builders may not be available now, but what about the fencing and the other things we talked about? And I know those are sidebar issues to this item, but
Yeah, so let me give you an update on those things. So to start with, on the trail, our open space ordinance requires a public hearing. We did have a public hearing on the trail master plan, which included this trail just recently.
Correct. Yeah. So that part of it was, last week. No, it's 2. It was 3 weeks ago. Sorry, 3 weeks ago.
So we believe that public hearing would cover this trail because it was on there and was kind of a focus point. And so to finish up approval of that trail would just require a supermajority vote of the city council.
Okay.
Now on the construction side, Will's talked to some of these companies that have been doing a lot of the trail building, and they're unavailable until spring, either by virtue of the work they have lined up or weather concerns or whatever. So I don't know that we're going to get this built until spring. As far as the fence goes, we're striking out on labor so far. We're still working on it. An option may be available. And then I think if we could get a couple of capable people, and then maybe you get some help from a couple of these mountain bike teams or something like that. I think it could be done in a day or.
I think we have a credit with the mountain bike teams with the agreement we have with them. And they've already had their state championship race, so their season is over. They're free.
Yeah, we have enough materials between what we have left in our inventory and what
Three Falls.
what's left at Three Falls that we've already paid for our materials. We just need to buy what's left up there. I think we could build, Jed figured around 450 feet of fence which would pretty much accomplish what we had discussed up there. So we're still working on the labor end of that. And then the kiosk is something we've got to kind of come up with the design and then we can get timing on that one.
We don't need any kind of a public hearing for the kiosk, right? I don't, or just do that by supermajority vote?
I think we need a hearing on that and then a supermajority vote.
Okay.
So.
But we could do a vote tonight on the fence or on the trail. I mean,
yeah.
And get moving on that when we can.
And we would move on it as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
So I've got a question about that trail. Is there a reason why it's walking only?
Yeah, I don't remember that being part of our discussion, but I'm not.
Because I feel like it's a trail that we want to be well worn and very defined so that there's no confusion. And to have a walking trail up that high, I don't know if it's going to necessarily get the use and have the worn definitive trail unless, you have bikers going through it.
I agree that the more traffic we can put on it, the better, because that's the purpose of the trail, is to highlight its use.
You know where the walking came from, Austin?
I think the walking, I think, is just something that was mentioned, but it's never really been clearly defined what this trail would be.
Yeah, the references that I've heard toward the walking trail have all been toward that west end, that the central to west end.
It does say that on this.
On there, yeah.
Right. So yeah, I think it's just a misunderstanding. So,
but we could easily. I mean, I think the motion could be
that-
made to override what it says there and include riding and equestrian and whatever we want.
We had Jed wrote the cover letter for this, and I think he was of the understanding that it was a walking trail. So
okay, I think it's a good point, Carla. So whoever wants to make the motion on that, I would be specific about the trail use.
Strike the walking only.
So I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I motion that the new trail alignment and fence be approved with the following condition of the trail being multi-use, striking, walking trail.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Jessica Smuin and a second by Carla Merrill. Any questions on the motion? Anything from legal counsel?
I didn't look at the document adopting it.
Wouldn't we have to have a
Voice vote
roll call vote?
Yeah, we'll need a supermajority.
it's a roll call vote when we do a supermajority vote.
Okay. All right. So we'll begin with those in the room. Lon Lot?
Lon Lot, aye.
Jessica Smuin, yes.
Jason?
Jason Thielen, yes.
Carla?
Carla Merrill, yes.
Greg?
Greg Gordon, yes.
Okay, the vote is unanimous in favor of the trail. Motion passes. And so, Craig, I would ask maybe if we could get together and decide whether or not a public hearing is required for a structure to go up there. Because if it's not, then I'd like to get going with that foundation as quickly as possible.
With Shane and Austin in the next day or two about that issue, because candidly, I'm not familiar with the ordinance.
Sure. No, I would say is definitely outside this meeting that we'd have that
Granted,
discussion.
every city's a little bit different, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't expect pop quizzes, I know.
And on the structure, we just need to focus in on what the design is going to be. so
Yeah.
we can build that foundation.
Because we need it to be classified as a structure.
Yeah,
If we can decide what a structure is.
Yes, that's exactly the point.
we started that discussion too.
Okay, good deal. All right, good. All right. Sorry, I've got to get back on track here. All right, staff reports. Austin, do you have anything?
I do not have anything for tonight.
Okay.
Well, actually, one thing. So we are working on the moderate income housing. We have to report on our progress on that, and so we're going to be preparing something. COVID-19 was, a real wrench in the works, and so, we didn't make as much progress as we probably would have liked to this year on that. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And Craig, do you have anything for us?
I suggest you make a motion to adjourn.
It's coming up pretty darn quick. And Chief William, do you have anything?
Nothing for tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Chief Thompson?
Nothing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Reed. Carla?
No.
I'm sorry. I started with Carla. I should have gone back to Shane. Shane, do you have anything?
I just want to make the council aware, typically in the winter, we keep Legacy Park restroom, the Creekside Park South restroom. This is the first winter with the new restroom at Smooth Canyon, so it has 4 doors instead of 2. So it has valves to isolate, so we'd only have 2 doors open. And then there's the 2 the restrooms that don't flush, the rodeo grounds and the Bowery or vaults. So those 5 are typically the ones that we keep open in the winter. It's difficult to heat them and keep the pipes from freezing. I told Cal to leave the Three Falls and the Lambert Park South restrooms open a little bit longer. This was like 10 days ago because the weather was still really nice.
Yeah.
And we actually had all the GFI and froze the south. It didn't damage anything, fortunately.
Well, that's good.
We've had it happen before. Anyway, with electric heat, it's very expensive to just the ones open that we typically have. That's the direction we'll go unless there's some major objection to that.
To closing them down?
Yeah.
Does anybody have an objection to that?
So are you going to keep the trails open one more week? The Three Falls and Lambert one more week?
Well, like this morning it was 14.
Yeah, but we're hitting our trend through Thanksgiving or Halloween, maybe just till November 1st.
Yeah, and that's what I told Cal before, and then we hit this kind of record low.
Yeah. Are we
for
done?
the record book. So I think they are open right now, but if we could, plan for November 1st, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, that works.
Okay. That's all I have. That's
okay.
Things
Thank
are
you.
progressing out here. I added CARES Act funds on the amended agenda, but we don't have any new information. So
Okay. Good. Jason, do you have anything?
Do. So question for you. We obviously went over 4 ordinance and resolutions today, but I'm just kind of wondering, obviously back in September, made the motion to table the transportation element of the general plan so that we could talk about it. The question I have is, what's the deadline for us getting this transportation element in the general plan approved by the city council?
I can address that. So we've already spoken with Craig about this, and our goal is to have this on the November 17th council meeting.
And what's the deadline to
We're
get
in the transition of city attorneys? We just kind of held this off. Let Craig, in fact, I emailed him a copy of that yesterday.
I can tell you that Hiram has already reviewed it. He's got the master plan back there.
Good deal.
We already
Okay.
put it in our binder, so.
What's the deadline that we have to get that done based on, we got a timeline that has to be done, right?
180 days.
So, yeah, 180 days, which basically put us till the end of the year, as I recall, Jason.
So January 31st?
December 31st, I believe, but we
31st?
typically don't have a city council meeting in December. And so that's why we were aiming for that November 17th.
Yeah, that 17th will be our last effective meeting.
Yeah.
The December meeting is usually a party.
So on the December 31st date, then does the entire general plan have to be completed on that date? Since, obviously
Just that ordinance.
transportation element isn't a standalone piece.
Shane, I believe isn't it November 24th are you talking about the planning commission or city council meeting?
Council.
I was just going to look at my calendar, see if I said the wrong date.
Do we have a meeting on the 24th?
My apologies. We plan to bring it to the November 10th meeting.
Yeah.
Then if there's issues, we still have the 24th to finish it up.
And I thought we had canceled the 24th meeting. So that's Thanksgiving week.
We'll need to make that one count.
Yeah.
On the 10th.
We really got to get in on the 10th.
Yep.
So we'll work with these guys on any comments they have, and we'll be ready.
On that note, are we holding that the hearing? Is that still November? I forgot the date. The 12th.
5 p.m.
We're still on schedule for that. Good.
Okay, so my question again is, so we have, by the end of December, we have to finish that transportation element. Does the whole general plan have to be approved at the same time?
No.
Or can that transportation element be approved by itself and meet that 180 days limit that we had?
Yes,
that's correct. We had discussed focusing on the transportation element and then coming back and taking care of the other updates on the other elements of the general plan later
in next year.
Yes.
Okay, so we don't have any issues attached with not approving the general plan, but just improving that one element.
Yeah, they get amended all the time.
Okay.
So that's not an issue at all.
Okay, and I guess the only thing I would say, just for our new legal representative who now has a general plan, my concern is and only is on this, that is our last general plan, we sent out a survey to our constituents. We kind of generated that general plan around the constituents' responses. This time, the process was different in that Jason Bond looked at different cities and what they were doing. He pulled stuff in there. He brought that to the planning commission. I was on that most of the time. There wasn't a lot of direction per se given to him. A lot of it was seeing what they had. We didn't change a lot in the planning commission when it came through. We're seeing now that, like with the transportation element, that we approved something that we actually missed something that the citizens wanted, so we added it now. My point I'm trying to say is the city council needs to be integral in the creation of that and the determining of what our future is. And to date, I don't think we've done that. So there's quite a bit of work there, I think, as the city the elected officials to go through that and take what the planning commission has done and then use that to look and see what we're missing that represents what the city wants. And so that's all I want to say. And that's why I've delayed saying yes to what they've already done, this planning commission, because I think the city council needs to weigh in and just not accept what they did, but look through it and figure out what they need to add to that or take away from that. So that's good. I will actually not be here on the 10th, the week of the 10th. So it looks like I missed this. So I'll try to connect with Austin to get my ideas in there, but I will not be here on the November 10th meeting. That's it, Shane. That's it, Mayor.
Well, thank you, Jason. So I'm concerned because it sounds like, Carla, will you also be absent in that meeting?
No, I'll be here for city council. I'm leaving the day after.
Okay, good. Is there anything that would require more than a 3 vote? Okay, all right, good. Yeah, Jason, if you could give your feedback to staff prior to leaving, that would be great. Okay, Greg, do you have anything? Is Greg with us? Okay,
sorry. Yeah, I said nothing. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Thanks again for your presentation earlier. Carla, do you have anything? I'm sorry, not Carla, Jessica.
No, not tonight.
Okay. And Jason?
No.
I'm calling everybody the wrong name. I'm turning into my own grandma, so we better bring this to an end pretty quick. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Any objection? Motion passes unanimously.
Aye.
Did you ever ask for
All
a
right.
second on that motion?
Not one, not ever. Hey, and I didn't use my time to make comment on this, but if you guys could all take a look at the news line when it comes out next week, I'm trying to make it very clear to the community that vandalism will be met with full repercussion. And that's going to be made pretty clear and bluntly in the news line. We've had a lot of problems with vandalism